Hey, Amy.
How many classes have you had this week, Robert?
This is like number 3 or 4. I can't remember.
There's a lot of Zooming going on. Hey, Quentin. Hey, guys. I see Jerry and Francisco. And Paul. Awesome. Just probably give a couple minutes for everybody to get connected and get their Revit started. Quentin, have you learned anything new this week so far?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I like your review stuff or your Bluebeam because I mean, you know, I already use it pretty regularly, but it's nice to go back and see some of the tricks and stuff that you kind of forget about. So that's pretty cool. So I mean, with
definitely
all even Revit, because I'm kind of familiar with it, but I look forward to maybe learning some tricks that I kind of thought about, or things like that.
Cool.
Hello.
Yeah, I forgot to mention in the hello. Hey, that's right. I just was going to say I forgot to mention in our Bluebeam session today that Bill Wright is a really good resource for tips and tricks on Bluebeam stuff too. He's done a lot in that program. So. But,
oh yeah, he took it upon himself to learn a bunch of that stuff, and he's shared it with some of us as well.
Oh, good. Oops. Let's see. Okay. All right. So this will be definitely a smaller crowd than when we're doing the Bluebeam. This is smaller on purpose because the idea here is we're not gonna cover as much necessarily as we would. We're gonna go slower. If I do go fast, part of it is, you guys can jump in and interrupt me. I can't see what's going on. All I can do is, show you what I need to show you. I'm gonna, walk through it and then we'll do it together. But definitely, we all stay muted when we're doing these, but if you have a question, just unmute yourself and catch me and I'll stop. I have no problem being interrupted. I want to make sure you're getting this, making it worth your time. So feel free to interrupt me at any time. All right, so 1:31. We'll go ahead and get started. So if you haven't opened Revit yet, you can go ahead and start it up. Hopefully everybody has a license. We have had some people where they're still on network licenses and they go to grab a license and they aren't allowed to open Revit. So hopefully that won't happen to anybody today. If it does, still please just follow along, and there are documents for training that go with the exact same agenda that we're doing today that you can do on your own time as well. And yeah, we will walk through opening the project file together, so don't worry about that yet. So a little bit of housekeeping. You can monitor your mute yourself. If you have a question, like I said, please unmute, jump in, interrupt me at any time. I will demonstrate the task first, and then we will go over it again as many times as we need to. If you're having a problem, we can stop and you can share your screen and we can look at what's going on. So it's interactive. So our goals today, get everyone introduced to working in Revit when using the model as a reference tool only. So the things that I'm going to highlight today about opening and detaching from central and all this stuff is because this is meant to be, how to work in the file as if it's your own file and you're just using it for reference or making some views and things like that. So we'll get more into that. We just understand some of the differences between working in Revit and compared to AutoCAD. If you're used to AutoCAD, I have helped train people that you did 20 years of AutoCAD and then they get into Revit and they're just throwing up their hands and stuff. So we don't want it to be painful, but I will try to point out some differences. Just some basic explanation of the software workspace, and we'll get into the basic tools for navigating, creating, or exporting views. and some basic annotation like dimensioning and text notes. So what is Revit? If you've not used it before, pretty much everybody has heard of the term BIM, Building Information Modeling. Revit is the software for that in my mind. It lets us build these three-dimensional, true-to-size 3D models, and but that are driven by data, but can also report out that data, which helps us with site planning, cost estimating, fabrication, and all that good stuff. How does Wolters and Wolf use Revit? At this time, we create sales models at the bid phase, and we create operations models, the drafting model in the drafting phase. At this time, they are two different styles of modeling. The goal eventually is to make it one style all the way through, but the tool we use at bid lets us create a model, a very highly accurate, data-rich model at the beginning very quickly. But it is not the same as what we do when we're in drafting. The drafting style of modeling uses a lot of other processes that we've developed with the database and takeoff and all that good stuff. So eventually we'll figure out how to merge the two. That's ultimately, ideally, what we want, of course. So Revit, working in a Revit file gives visual access to the scope of a project instantly. A picture is worth 1,000 words. But working in a Revit model requires being careful about how you access it. For example, understanding how to open, work in, and close the file without causing other team members to lose work or interrupt their work or keep them from working is really important to understand. Working in Revit requires understanding that you're working with a live element and everything has data behind it. This is a major difference in my mind between working in AutoCAD and working in Revit. When you're working in AutoCAD and you're creating a set of shop drawings, you're drawing your floor plans, you're drawing your wall sections, your elevations, your details, and you're putting a border on them, or you've got paper space, model space, and it's all, this linear development of this drawing package. In Revit, you're building the model first, you're establishing what the project is, and then you're cutting it up to get those views. So build it first, you get that insight from the very beginning. That's one of the biggest benefits to virtual pre-construction, is building it right in the beginning as best you can with the information you have. And then you start to get your views and create your sheets and do all that work. The drafting side, I should say. So it can be intimidating to a new user. It asks a lot of questions. Before you can do anything, even opening a file, what do you want it to do? And you'll see all these different dialog boxes depending on what you're doing in Revit. And it takes a while to understand what's okay to say yes to, or what's okay to say no to, or whatever. So we're going to look at some of that today. But if we go through the process that I show you today of just detaching, a lot of this will go away and you won't have to worry about these things. If you have to work in a model that's a live work shared model on the server, you do need a little bit more, but that's all covered in a document. So we're going to walk through that, separating that model. So I do want to do a quick poll real quick just to see where we're at. It worked this morning. I had troubles with it yesterday. Hopefully it comes up. There's 4 questions there. So if it doesn't come up, let me know. But if I start seeing results come in, then I know we're good to go, and I'll give that about a minute to run.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
I don't have anything.
Okay, let me try it again.
Yeah, nothing here.
The same thing. Okay, let me try a relaunch. Relaunch. Continue.
Okay, there it is.
That's so weird. It did the same exact thing yesterday. Okay, good. Okay, I'll give that another 20 seconds or so. Everybody's worked in AutoCAD for the most part. That's good. So you'll understand some of my references. About a third have not used Revit. Okay. All right, great. I'll go ahead and end that. Okay. So what we're going to look at today, we're going to talk about opening that file and working with these dialog boxes. We'll touch on some of them. We'll go over the Revit workspace, browser tree, understanding properties, working with the views. First, I'm going to walk through a bunch of information about views, how to navigate them, understanding even what you're looking at and depth and all of that kind of stuff that we'll get into. And after I do that, then we will have this is part of the session, section C here will be walking through me showing it and you guys creating these things and cutting up the model and creating your own views. And we'll talk about exporting those to DWG. We'll have a little break in there. And then we'll go into some of the basic editing tools that you might need, and then some annotation. And then we'll do a little bit at the end about how to customize the workspace. So again, in this part here, when we talk about views, I will walk through some important things I think that'll help, hopefully help you understand things. And then when we get to creating your own, you'll have a pretty good idea. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so first, hopefully everybody got a file copied over to their local. And I'm going to move this over here. And so from this home screen, I tell everybody, this is, to me, the best practice for opening a file in Revit is to open it from the open command. You don't want to double click it from the file manager. When you double click it from the file manager, you miss the options of detaching from central. You're not necessarily sure what version you're opening it in, and version does matter, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So I always just go to File Open or from the home screen, and your home screen is going to either look like this or similar if you're in 2019 or 2020. We just do Open. And I'm going to browse to where my file is. So go ahead and browse to your file. And you just want to single click on it. And this is where it's important. This is where I really want to emphasize. If you're just using this file for reference and you don't contribute, you're not contributing to the modeling, you're not creating anything for the project, but you just want to be able to open it and cut it up and do some dimensions and maybe create your own views, I highly advise selecting it and detaching down here at the bottom left, detaching from central. So what that means is normally a central model means it's a model that's hosted in a location where multiple users can get to it. And each person will open, if they're working in it and need to contribute, they will open from that location. Revit creates a local copy for them. They work on it, and then when they're ready to save those changes back, they synchronize back to that central model. And then everybody can see everybody's work. As each person synchronizes, you can all see what all you've done. If you don't detach and you still try to work in the model for reference, you can still you can affect their workflow. Anytime you touch something in the Revit model with your mouse and select it, even if you're not doing anything, even if you just select it, Revit will think you've done something with it or you're working on it. And it's constantly checking in the background to see who's doing what. And the main reason it does this is it wants to prevent people from overwriting each other's work. So if I'm, have played with a wall or done something, and then somebody else actually needs to edit that, and maybe I did something, Revit will not let them continue. When they go to do something, it will say somebody else owns it, and you have to relinquish, and you have to do all this stuff, and you have to stop and communicate with each other. So that's why I say, ultimately, if you just want to do your own thing, just open and detach. And even if you don't save, that's fine. You're still creating a local copy, your own copy, wherever you want it. It doesn't have to be local, but you're creating your own copy wherever you want to create it. That's completely severed from that central file. So single clicking and making sure you select detach from central is critical. Now when I pick open, I'll get the option to detach and preserve work sets or discard work sets. And at this time, you can do either. It's probably faster to open with discard. But preserving them, if we have set up work sets, that can help with visibility and stuff. But it really, at this point in time with what our models and stuff, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to discard the work sets just to show that it's not critical at this time. Depends on what you need it for, but we don't use them much ourselves yet. but we'll probably be getting there. So now it's just going to open up, and there's my file. So I'm going to switch to my help document to show, actually, no, I want it, oops, pardon me. Yeah, it's in here. All right, so your Revit might look like this if you've never really worked in it much or customized it. So since mine's already set up different, I just grabbed this off Autodesk's website. So what we have our main work view area. We have the project browser, the properties palette, the ribbon, like every other program. There's a little quick access toolbar up here, some communication center stuff with Autodesk, and then this green area. So this green area is what replaces the command line in AutoCAD. If you're used to looking down at the command line in AutoCAD, you're going to want to train your eyes to look up here and watch what happens along here. Depending on what you're working on, you'll have different options, checkboxes, you can enter dimensional values and all that. So that's a big shift in practice, you know, where you're looking. You might enter a command and do something and then you don't know what it's asking you for. So you just want to get used to looking up here. And then we'll go over how to change it. Like I said, on mine, I like mine. This is my usual setup. It looks like this, where I've moved that quick access toolbar down below. I've added a bunch of tools to it. I've half minimized my ribbon. And I like to see the browser full here, and I like to see properties full here, because depending on what I'm working with, this can get really full of information. If I pick on one of our curtain panel families, there's a lot of options in here. So I like to keep that as expanded as possible. Okay. So we talked about opening the file. Everybody hopefully got into that first view. So this is just a default, because of the Walters and Wolf model, it's just a default view that we have set up in our template, I believe. Or it might be one of the views where it has big long strings of text or whatever. It's just an opening view, and we're gonna get past that pretty quick. So again, if you have questions, you can raise your hand, you can unmute yourself, you can type something in the chat if you want. I'll look there every once in a while. But again, don't hesitate to just speak out and interrupt me, it's fine. Okay, so again, this is the project browser.
Excuse me. Could you go over like opening it and detaching it again one more time? Sorry.
Yes, no problem. I'm gonna close out. Okay, so you go to that open.
Open.
You want a single, yeah. And then just single click on that file name.
Put that somewhere. All right, now it's not showing up where I put it.
If you need to grab another copy, if you are connected to the server, I can show you where they are on the server. It might just take it a sec to copy over. Maybe you can connect it, I think so. Oh yeah, I did not put it in jobs. Oop. So it is that dub data HQ.
So that was under
make sure you,
jobs training? Oh,
yes.
Training. Okay.
And then just grab the one that matches your version of Revit. I'll just talk about versioning a little bit while he's looking for that. So Revit models can, if you open a 2018 model in 2019, it's going to upgrade that model. If you try to open a 2018 model in 2019, it won't let you. So every time you, but it's major to upgrade a model, and you don't want to just open it and let it do that. I'll go talk about the ribbons in just a sec. Good. Okay, we'll look at that. Upgrading the model is usually a major decision by the team when you're ready. You don't want to just open it and let it upgrade because it could potentially blow things up. So because it can't go backwards, and so there's a lot to versioning. So if you just stick with the version, the drafting team and the sales team, they're really good about labeling their folder with the version of Revit that the model is created in, so you know what version of Revit to open. So the ribbon, so we'll look at that. I have no ribbons closer. Okay, so we'll go back and look at the ribbons. Did you get that file?
Yeah, I got moved over.
Okay, so just once you to the open command, make sure you select that detach.
Oh, there it is, detach. Okay, then click open.
Okay. Yep, and then click open, and then you can just do either one of these options, discard or preserve, doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that.
No problem, you're welcome. Okay, so ribbon. So this little arrow at the end, do you have, so here's the whole ribbon, like fully expanded. And then at the right, there's the option to minimize it. So I usually do mine like this. You can completely collapse it. If it's not there, just keep going, hitting this arrow, and you should be able to toggle through until they all show up. So just let me know you're good to go on that, and I'll keep going on the ribbon question. There's a little tiny arrow there at the end of this. Or if you want to share your screen, Paul, that's fine too. Let's see if it's there. Oops. Why won't it let me unmute? Oh, Zoom. Unmute all.
So I can see it.
I
I do have the ribbons now, but they're just different looking than yours. But I seem to have the ribbons you're talking about.
Okay, what version are you working in?
2019.
Okay, yeah, so it probably there are some little differences.
Okay, like I don't have
Yeah,
that properties
so.
bar that you have off to the right.
This over here? Yeah, so I moved
Yeah,
it over there, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying mine's off to the right. It's got a lot more stuff in it like than yours does. So it just seems like it's all compounded into one big ribbon on the right.
Yeah, so, oh, okay. Yeah, we can take a look at that. We'll look at customization at the end.
Okay.
So if we want to mess around with that on screen, we can totally do that.
That's fine.
So we'll go back to that then.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So going back to the browser, so understanding, this is almost like a little file manager. It's the browser tree. So a Revit project contains everything about the project: the modeling, the details, the schedules, the families that build the model, the sheets, everything is in one file. And so this is how Revit organizes it with this project browser. And again, I put my browser over here so I can see the whole thing. And I put properties over here because I don't like it on top of each other. And I've also seen them get tabbed where the project browser will be, I think at the bottom or something, or there's a way to untab them. So they'll both be in the same place. But I like to separate them out. This is how I like to work. I like to see that full browser. And at the top are all of the views that exist in the project so far, and the views can be added to sheets. Schedules are called views as well, and they can be placed on sheets. Then there's the sheet section and the families. The families are where, you know, is the core of our modeling and our detailing. All of our annotation symbols are families. They're like blocks in AutoCAD. They come in, they can be edited, but Revit actually does the editing for a lot of them for you automatically based on stuff that's happening in the background. So you have to do, there's a lot less manual editing in Revit because it's looking at the data behind the families you've built. So it's really smart. Our curtain panels, so these are all our frame families. So all that stuff gets organized here. And then groups, which some people on Teams use, but I don't use them much. And there's Revit links, and we'll talk about links. You can see those in another place as well.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm sorry, I was talking to myself. That's why
No problem. Okay, so, and just to show you kind of what I was talking about, let me get this view. Whoops, let me delete it here. Remove from sheet. So this is just a border, the piece of paper, and the views are all up here, and it's supposed to be for floor plan level 3. So all I have to do is build my model, cut up my thing, create my views, and then I just drag those views onto that sheet. So let's go ahead and place that view. It's taking it a second. There we go. So this is like, you know, paper space. Right now we're 100% paper space. I can double click to activate the view, and now I'm through my model space window, and I can right click deactivate. You can also right click activate, but I like that they added that double click. But ultimately, to really get to the whole view itself, you can either open it from the browser tree here, or since you know this is the view on that sheet, you can just double click on that view here. And now I'm just 100% quote unquote model space. So, but we're looking at the model, like these are live elements. Oh, something I'll point out now that, you might not have set up yet. I believe it's on the quick access toolbar from default. Let's just take a look here. Maybe this one's a little squished. So you should be able to find this little button right here that's thick lines on the left and thin lines on the right. And once you set it in Revit, it stays. But if it's not set, you might have something that looks like this. So you pick on that and it changes it all to thin lines. What this button does is let us see how it would look if it's printed. But obviously it's a garbled mess. So I always leave it on thin lines in case you're wondering if you've had that, if yours looks thick. So that should be, yeah.
How did you get to the third floor view? Like I clicked on mine, but it stayed on the same page.
Okay, so if you're on the page, you can double click and you've opened the view. But if you want to actually open and not be on the page, you can go over here in the browser and you can see this is our current sheet because it's bold. Okay. And this right here is the view. So when I take this view off the sheet and I just remove it, now there's no view attached to that sheet. Now the view only is accessible up here under floor plans. Once that view is on the sheet, then if you're in a sheet in a project and you don't know, where the view is or how it's stored, like, this gets all customized and crazy. So you can at least go to your sheet and you can double click right from there and it'll take you right to the view.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. That's the fastest way to access it, especially if it's like an architect's project, who knows what like ours, we have pretty consistent standards that we can get used to. So, okay. So that's partly just to help understand that, we've created the model, we've cut up and made these views, and we're placing them on sheets in this, and that's all controlled over here in the browser. Let's see. So again, going back to the point of almost everything, well, I shouldn't say back to the point, but to the point of almost everything is 3D. So obviously we know that this is 3D. It's a model, we can spin it around and we can pick on these things. But grids are 3D, levels are 3D. Everything everything like is on a plane. Pardon me for a second. A bunch of noise coming from the house. Okay, sorry about that. So, and I'll explain that by going to, say, the south elevation. So right now, you can see there are these levels, and these levels are forever in that model. Once you create a level, it's creating that plane in the model. These are the grids. Right now, these grids, they have this little 3D next to them. You know, they're considered 3D right now. If we go to any one of these floor plans, we're not going to see those grids. Oh, shoot. What did I do here? Okay. We're not supposed to see those grids. What did I do? There's first floor. I must have been messing with it. Okay, sorry about that. So that grid, why is that one going through? Well, my point was going to be, once I grab these by this little grip and bring them all down, now that grid is cutting through all those planes. And if I go to the first floor, now I can see those grids. So I went to the south elevation using the browser by double clicking over here. You can also, like if I want to go to this elevation over here, I can also double click, or I can pick and right click, go to elevation view. So this is just kind of explaining how everything is like, even though it's just a grid line, even then it's still 3D. So I just dragged all those down. And if I go back to my first floor, now you can see those grids. So if you ever get in a project and you can't see grids or whatever, try going to an elevation and see if they've been, if they're just not cutting down through that floor. But that's just trying to highlight the fact that like everything in here, even though you're just cutting a view, it has depth, it has information, it has properties. So we'll talk about properties next. So if I go back to my 3D view, and again, I showed you earlier, you know, when you pick on a curtain panel, you get all kinds of information here. So right now in this view, or any view you might have open, if you just pick out an open space, you're going to see information about the view. If I pick on a name of a view or something in the browser, now I'm seeing information about that because that's what I selected. If I pick on a curtain panel, now I get that information. It tells me what category it is. I can do my type selector in this case and change it out, and I can see all the options that come with that family. So depending on what you have selected, you're going to see different information in the properties. Again, that's why I like to have it just docked all by itself. Getting it docked over here, which we're going to go over at the end, is tricky. You have to do it just right, and when I do it on Zoom, it gets all weird, but we'll talk about that. If you do want to do that right now, just for the sake of this, you can try picking on the top bar, and when you drag it, you have to go outside to the right of Revit and come back in over the edge, I believe, and drop it. It's very touchy. Usually it likes to dock on the whole top part or whatever, which is why I try not to mess with it yet, because it's finicky. Okay, so we talked about the browser and how that's a little bit organized. This is completely customizable up in this area. Depending on the model you open, you're going to see different categories and different groupings over here. And the properties gives you all the information about each and every little thing. Even if it's just a grid, it's going to tell you a little bit about it. So everything has meaning. There's not a lot of stuff in Revit that doesn't have meaning, but you can do lines and line work that are just basic drafting, and we'll look at that when we get to annotation.
How did you separate your properties browser from your project browser? You got them on two different sides of the screen. I can't separate the two of them. If I drag one to the left, they both go.
Okay, so there is a trick. Let's look that up. Somebody else had that problem. Let's see, tabbed palettes, Revit. See if I can find that. Dockable windows, properties and project. To show or hide a dockable window, click View tab, Windows, click and drag the title bar at the top. Okay, so do you mind sharing your screen and we can take a look at that? You can try it. Because you might not be the only person that has that question. I think what you have to do is grab the title bar at the top. Yeah, okay, so you're gonna share, okay, great. Yeah, right, go for it.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
All right.
There we go.
All right, how about now? Okay, so I have this over
now
here.
You can see it.
Fine. Okay, if I try to drag this over here, both of these come with it. So if I try to go like this, and it wants to go to my second screen. It's not kind of letting me do, and then it wants to go horizontal, which I don't like.
Right.
Can't seem to get it to do. It goes that way, but it won't go left or right.
Let's see. Try to ungroup within the group, click the tab. So can you try clicking and dragging the tab instead? Did you try that yet? Yeah, try grabbing that and dragging that. Did it undock it? Oh, it did. It separated it. Okay, great. So go ahead and try dragging that over to the right. There you go. Awesome. It's the little things. All right. So yeah, okay. So we know we need to grab it by the tab. Okay. And yours popped right into place. Okay, good.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's just so much nicer to be able to see more of that stuff. Okay. So now we're going to do the yeah.
Question for you. I was trying to drag the column grids down and then view them like you were showing, but I can't seem to get any to show.
Okay. Well, let's take a look on your screen. Go for it.
Sorry, I just need to drag it over. You guys can see it now?
Actually, where you had it was good.
Oh, really? Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm trying to just, you're going there, right, and dragging down?
Oh, okay. Grab on the open circle part instead.
Oh, okay.
That little, yeah, that guy. I kind of did it quickly, but in this case, it's finicky. You kind of have to want to zoom in and make sure you're grabbing just that open circle. So now you've got it.
Okay.
There you go. You'll see, yeah. So there's all kinds of grips. Yep, there you go.
Okay, so it moves all of them. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, yep. Okay. All right, so now we'll get into understanding how to navigate these views. You know, if you want to make your own views for your own dimensions and your own purposes, or, you know, even if it's RFIs or anything, understanding how to work in these to get what you need for references is really important. So one of the first things you'll probably notice is there's these green dashed lines everywhere. Those are reference planes, and sometimes we need them. The modeler needs them. Sometimes we just make them temporarily, and then we're not very good at cleaning up after ourselves. But if they're in a model you're working in and you don't like them, you just want to make sure you don't delete them. I'll show you how to hide them, because there may be elements in the model that are actually constrained or locked to those reference planes. And if you delete the reference plane, you actually delete elements that have been modeled. So if you don't want to see those reference planes, you can hide the category in the view. There's a whole lot of ways to play with the visibility options. So we're just going to touch on this one for now. But if you pick on the reference plane and right click hide, and you tell it category, and we're going to go over this again later. I think that one's in again later. You can go ahead and do it along with me though. I just hid the category. So down here on the bottom, that hides all the reference planes in the entire view, and it's just this view. So down here on the bottom, there's this little light bulb called Reveal Hidden Elements. And once it's pink, you can see anything that you've told to hide. I know I hid this by category, so I'm going to select it and right-click and unhide by category. And then I can turn off that little temporary. So with any kind of category, you can do that. If I wanted to hide the curtain panels, I could grab a curtain panel, right-click, hide and view element, and just hide the one curtain panel. And I'll just undo, or I can pick, right-click, hide and view the whole category. And now I don't see those curtain panels anywhere. I'm just going to do a Z. Well, no, actually, let me go forward. Then to bring them back, I click on that little light bulb. And then I can see it. And I can right click, and I know I did the category. So I'll do unhide category. Elements isn't even an option. So you can do a single item hide or a whole category hide. There is this temporary hide isolate where it's just for the moment, it'll do this same kind of thing. So if I click on that, I think I have to pick an element first. So I'll pick that reference plane. And then I say isolate, and what that does is turn everything off but this element, or isolate category, isolate element or isolate category. And if I do that, then I see everything of just that category. But this is just a temporary setting. So if you don't want, and then I just can say reset. So if you know you don't want them in your views, the way to keep them permanently hidden is to do the right click, hide and view category. And now in your view, you don't have to see them at all. The other way is just temporary. So I'm going to do a Control Z to undo that. But that's the reference planes. I'm just explaining the part about hiding the element now because it's important to know that you don't want to delete those because it could blow up the model. Okay, so we'll talk about floor plans first. Floor plan views are created based off the levels that are in the project. So if I go back to the south elevation, I just clicked on it in the browser. We talked about these earlier. These are the levels that have been created in this project. And as you create each level, when you're setting up the project, Revit creates the view for you. But I'm going to go ahead and Shift Delete. And oops, I lost all my views. That doesn't mean I lost the levels. It doesn't mean I did anything to the model. I didn't hurt the model. All I did was delete views of the model. So to get those views back, I go to the View tab, and we're going to walk through this later when we do a little work session. And I can go to the floor plan views, I can select them all, and I can create them. So this is just to explain how floor plan views are created. They're created based off of those levels. So we'll be doing that again. Like I said, we'll be doing that in the work along. So that's how they're created. And then there's then you can edit. I'm going to go to the third floor. Then you can edit how much you're looking at. So right now, so the extent area, this little area right here over in the properties on the right, is where we're going to be focusing for the next steps of just all these different view types. Right now, I can't change the view range, and I want to change the view range. I want to change how deep I'm looking into this project. But because it's a Walters and Wolf project, we actually have a template applied to that view. If you're detaching and you're making your own views for your own purpose, you can select on that button, tell it none. Now there's no template applied, and now I'm free to go in and do what I want. So I want this view range to change a little bit. By default, it's got several settings in here, and this little picture is supposed to help you understand this. And this is the part that takes a little while sometimes to get your head around, but I'm going to bring it up in the Word document because I can zoom in on it. This is right here. Okay, so there's in that view thing, again, we're talking about looking down in plan. So the view is being cut at the level that it is. It's its default level. But we're telling it to cut the view 4 feet above that. So this cut line right here is number 2. The cut plane is right here. The bottom of the view right here is how far down we're looking by default, 0. So we're telling it cut through at 4 feet high and just look down to 0. so that same level. But you can also tell it to go below, so like an underlay if you want it to look at it that way. So you can have this view depth, which means, you know, you're setting it to look even further down below. The top, I don't usually really mess with that. Maybe that would matter, maybe if you were doing like a reflected view, but I never really mess with that unless I need to move my whole cut plane way up high, and then I'll just set the cut plane and the top at the same level. So this one's kind of a funky one. I hardly ever mess with that. But to show you what that means in Revit, so right now I'm cutting the 3rd floor, but if I want, I can tell it to look all the way down to the 1st floor. And that way I can see things that are going on below as well. So that view range has default settings that once you turn off the template, you can go in and change. So I'll just set it back to the 3rd floor. But I can say, oh, I want to cut it only at like 2 feet above, or maybe I want to cut it up higher because I want to see something in the spandrel area. And if I did want to go up high, you know, just make sure it'll tell you if this cut plane is higher than the top, it will tell you. And then you just make the top and the cut plane be the same. But by default, it cuts through basically the middle, you know, middle of the wall, general middle area. But that's understanding, you know, how a floor plan view is even created, what is it based on, and how do you edit how far it's looking, you know, how deep is it, where is it cutting. If I'm working on a sloped wall, sometimes I just want to see what's happening right at a thin slice. You know, what are my work points right at 2.5 inches above the floor? If I make it cut at 2.5 inches and I make the bottom of it at 2.5 inches, so it's just a very thin paper slice right through that level. So maybe I can see where something hits on the slope. So that's understanding how the view range works to control what you see in a floor plan. But for elevations, sections, and details that we'll just look at really next, it's a little bit different. So you create an elevation, we'll be doing that later. And when you create that, you know, you see certain part of the wall. When you pick on the elevation bubble and you pick, in our case, the little triangle, this is our standard, it doesn't come like that in Revit. You get this cut line. And there are options over here for cropping to do. There are also, where'd it go? Right, that guy. Oh, it's because we're not in that view. Okay, so if I don't say crop view, I don't get my little grips here, but I do have this clip with line, or this line clip here. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell it crop view so I can get my little grips. So these basically adjust the width of your view, and then this is your depth clipping line. So over here, there's far clipping, there's far clip offset. This line represents that far clip offset. You'll see that value change if you drag it. Now it's at 161 feet. So if I bring it back in, now it's just at 40 feet. But this is telling this elevation view how far into the project I want it to look. How much am I going to see? Am I going to see it all the way through? So in an elevation, you don't typically want to do that. You know, maybe you have some corners around the outside and you want to see a little bit of that. You could drag it and see some returns over here or something. But if you're just looking at a flat wall, it just has to go inside of it a little bit. A little bit about the far clipping that they have on their site. Again, I took this from Autodesk. It should be right here. Okay, so in Revit, there's this far clipping setting, no clip, clip without line, or clip with line. So this blue line represents that, or this little blue square, I should say, represents your far clip line. That's what this line is here with the grips. So you can either tell it, totally ignore that, like don't even clip it, just show me everything. Clip it, but don't give me edges, or clip with line and give me edges. So what that looks like is here's their elevation, and there's their far clip. So here it's saying clip without line, so there's no edge around, you're just seeing the extent of what's happening at that point. Here they're saying clip with line. I want to see a little edge. You know, I want to, and then this one is where they're not even clipping. It's not clipping at all. It's just showing, even though the elevation bubble is out here and the line's there, it's just showing everything. So that's just the difference between those settings. So I think I usually use clip with line to make sure I know exactly what I'm looking at. When you're in a wall section, it has the same kind of settings. You can drag it to see how far you're seeing in that model. So again, you're cutting it live. You can move it. You can, your view will change depending on where it is and what you're looking at. So if I go to this view now, I can see this wall here, and I can see this wall here. But if I want to see, and this is what I do when I'm checking my models, I'll actually drag that line all the way down. And if I go to that view, now I can see what I'm cutting through, and I can also see what's beyond. And this is how I like to check to make sure I actually did get my horizontals lined up. So, I can put a little reference plane here, run it across, and see if I've got everything lining up nicely. So being able to adjust that view to see that stuff, and then when you're done, you just bring it back in. So that's that same thing. It has the same kind of options as the elevation. If you're creating a detail view, we'll come in here and we'll create this little call out here. Now I've just created a detail view. It knows it's a detail view. Well, we'll walk through that again. I'll show you a little bit more about that. But if I go to it, first, its settings are same as parent view as far as how far it's looking. So usually that's probably fine. But if you wanted to do something different, you could go independent, and then you could change that far clip offset value to like 50 feet. And then I'd be looking all the way down to however, or maybe it's like 300 feet. Now I can see what's beyond. So you can mess with that. But by default, it's the same setting as the view you cut it on. So that's just a rough overview of how what you see is manipulated and to show what you need. It's in floor plans, it's with the view range, and in elevations and sections and details, it's with that guy there, that grip. Shows you how far you're looking. Some of the other settings in the views are your scale, which I use this one because I like to see the whole list, but it's also up in the properties. So view scale by default with Walters and Wolf views, it gets set by default. If you're working in an architect's model and you want to create your own view and do your own thing, you can just mess with the scale, whatever you need it to be over here.
Hey,
There's
Amy,
visual style. Yeah.
another question. Is there a way, or I guess I'm having an issue where I'm not seeing your full screen, so when you're going down to the bottom to select certain items, I'm not sure if it's just a setting on my side on Zoom, or if others are having that issue.
Let's see. Let me see if I can help with that. How far down? Can you see this down here now?
Yep, I see it now.
Can you see where I'm? Okay. All right. So I'll just keep it a little bit shrunk. Okay. All right. Thank you. So down here, again, there's the scale option there, or it's up here. And then there's visual style. There's a bunch of different things to play with in here. Detail level, there's coarse, medium, and fine. What we model, everything we do shows up in all three of those levels. The only place where I've really seen this make a difference is with the structure model, structural shapes, and we'll look at that later. If they're set to coarse, they're just represented with lines, like an eye shape is just an eye. When it gets to medium, it starts to be a little bit more refined and have some thickness. And then when it's fine, they actually add, the radiuses and stuff. But I always put it on fine because we're always dealing with steel, so I like to see it. And then there's, I'll go to a 3D view. So I'm just going to go to the 3D views here and expand that and get that guy. So this is just to show the different styles. Right now it's set to hidden, but you'll see if I set it to wireframe, it's looking at every edge, every little thing, which I hardly ever use. Depends on what I need to see, not in the 3D, so that's for sure. So I like to look in 3D in shaded mode just so I know where the spandrel is and I can see the glass colors and it just looks nicer. So that's down here, this visual style. We don't have to worry about the sun path and shadows and rendering at this time. There's some view cropping settings and a couple of other things that we'll look at when we get playing with the floor plans. So in those views, you can, get to the view you need, change the scale if you need it, change the settings if it's not controlled by a template. Like that, put it to fine. You can make it shaded in any kind of view. So I made it shaded in this view. It just looks like extrusions and glass. So usually hidden line is the best option for something like this, like a floor plan. And then we'll do the hiding and revealing elements one more time in 3D. So I can pick on one frame and get it out of my way by picking on it, right-clicking and hiding the element. And then I can bring it back, pick it, right-click, unhide. Or I can pick, right-click, hide category. And now all the curtain panels are hidden. And then I come back, pick, right-click, unhide that category. So this is really helpful when you need to get, if you're, especially in architect's models where there's a lot of extra stuff that we don't need, you can just pick on it and hide it. There are lots of other ways to control the visibility, but that's one quick way to get something out of your way. And you can just hide it. Okay, so now we'll walk through going ahead and making your own views. So the first thing we want to do, so this is the part where you're going to work along if you haven't been yet and you haven't needed to yet, but if you were, that's cool. Go ahead and go up to the floor plans and select the first and hit shift, select them all and just hit the delete key. Okay, so now we have no floor plan. What happened? And this is going to happen if you open a model that we've cleaned. When we get architectural models, sometimes they're 500 megs, 800 megs. We have a Dynamo routine that we can run that will delete all the views, delete all the links, delete all their drawings, delete all their sheets and all their stuff, and basically let us shrink it down to a lot smaller. We can really get that file down. But then you open it and there's no floor plans. So how do you get your floor plans? So, and we'll talk about making a 3D view too, because that'll be one of the first things you want. So to get a floor plan back into a model, you just go to that view tab and the plan views option. And from that drop down and just take that one at the top. And again, I'll walk through this a couple times. So this is gonna pop up, it always does. So we'll just talk about this for a second because you're gonna have to deal with it. You haven't saved your project recently. What do you want to do? Do you want to save? Do you want to save and set reminder intervals? Do you want to not save and set reminder intervals? Well, I don't want to do any of that, so I'm just going to close it. And so now I'm continuing with my command. But I'll cancel what I was doing since it popped up and show you where you can change that setting. So on the File menu options, General, right at the very top, the very first thing is that reminder setting. You can turn it off if you want. I leave it on because it does remind me to save, even though I don't typically save when it asks me to, because I'm in the middle of something, always. I still let it remind me. So if you want to change that, you can just change that right there. Okay, so back to where we were. View, plan views, floor plan, shift to select. It's only going to have floor plans in here that don't have views yet. If there's nothing in here, then you already have the views somewhere. And you just say, okay, and it creates those views. And it categorizes them all. Now you have this new folder in your browser. So I'll just delete those again. These are the easiest to make because you're just selecting from a list. So that's the View tab, Plan Views, Floor Plan. Grab what you want. And I will point out here, you can see that it's going to use the WW Floor Plan 1/16 template, but that's just neither here nor there for what we're doing. I'm just showing you that that's how the template is getting applied automatically to these views, is because it's been told to right here. That won't happen in an architect's model necessarily. We don't know what they have. So then we click OK, and now we have our floor plans. So that part's pretty easy. To create an elevation, I'm going to go to the first floor plan. Now, I've been clicking and picking through a lot of views here. So if you hit this little down arrow, select this down arrow, switch windows, that one probably on the view. I can't remember where some of these live because I use it, I've had it on my ribbon. Okay, so it's on the view tab as well, the switch windows button. You can see that I have all these views open. So every view that I've double clicked on and opened, if I haven't closed it with an X up in the right corner, it's still open and you start to get a long list. So an easy way to manage those if you don't want all of those open is it will close everything that's hidden. Now only my current view is open and I can start opening and building my list again. You don't have to do that, but it gets long if you're trying to switch between views and you're in 2018 and you don't have the nice tabs, then that can get messy.
Quick question.
So,
Oh, sorry. I just noticed that your first floor has all the grid lines on it. Mine does not. Did I open mine differently? Because I just double clicked on first floor.
okay. So here's what I had. Here's how that happens. I'm going to go into the south elevation, and it's because I pulled these grid lines down. So I'm going to select the grid lines again, and I'll pull them back up. Now those grid lines are no longer crossing those planes. And if I go to my first floor now, it's going to look like yours, except for, let me go to this view too. And I'll pull these back up because that's.
I went to south and I don't even see those grid lines to drag down.
Okay, so let's see if, what are your settings? Let's look at your, let's go ahead and show me your screen. Do a stop share.
Oh. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So this is, do you see my Revit?
Yes.
Or is just my screen? Okay, this is what I'm looking at right now. So where are you needing to look?
So, no, so you're in the right place. So those grid lines are up there. See the B10? Like any one of those, if you select those, go ahead and select one.
Oh, I see.
Okay, now, yeah, now zoom in and make sure you grab, that's the annoying thing, because zoom in a little bit. You want to grab the open circle part, and there's those other groups that kind of get in the way, so it's always annoying. Yeah, go ahead and drag those down, and then those will show up on that first floor, because you're actually telling those grid lines to live all the way down below the first floor. So now if you go to your first floor view, you should be able to see those.
I see.
And there they are. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And yeah, sure.
So
and go ahead.
Sorry, when I was following along with what you were doing, I grabbed when you zoom in there, I think I grabbed the bottom button, open button, not that top. Oh no, I grabbed that top one, right? But yeah, that one. Is that the right one to grab?
That one stretches them up and down from the top. You're in that's in the plan view. And in the plan view, either end, you're just stretching them, you know, further out from the building. In an elevation, go ahead and go to, in the elevation, you want to grab the bottom. So go back to that elevation, the south, and select on the grid. You're still going to get a bubble at a little circle at the top that just lets you stretch them upward. And then there's a circle at the bottom that lets you stretch them downward.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to do it on your screen?
I already did it, so I have the grid lines now.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Yep. Okay. So I will go back here. So just a little bit more about those grid lines. By default, they're 3D, and you know your grid is still 3D because it says 3D right here. No matter how far I zoom in, it does not get bigger, which is crazy. But there's a lot of different symbols and things happening when you select that grid. Again, Revit's asking, you know, like letting you know some things like this is a locked in place and this is locked in place, and this checkbox turns the bubble on or off. This is telling me the distance to some other element, and so temporary dimension. This is telling me that this grid is being coordinated with another model. So right now we see it's 3D. If I pick on that, it changes to 2D. And now if I stretch that one down, it doesn't really, see, I grab it wrong all the time. Now it's just 2D drafting basically. So that, oh, it switched it back to 3D. So it doesn't, now I don't know, let's see, at that point if it's 2D, I think it's because I dragged it first. You can tell them to be 2D, and we do that sometimes for drafting where maybe we don't want them showing up everywhere for whatever reason. So you can tell it to not be 3D anymore. Top and bottom, there we go. Now, if I get that, drag it down, it's not going to show because it just sees it as a drafting kind of like a line now. So as long as it still says 3D, I'm just doing some undos. As long as it still says 3D, then if you stretch it down, it will cross those planes. So that's the kind of stuff it just takes a little bit of getting used to and understanding. Levels are the same way. You can drag levels across, you know, to wherever they need to be. We usually drag them all the way across just to make sure. I always like the levels and the grids to drag all the way across when I'm first setting it up so I can see everything. And then when you get into some drafting views, you can tell these to be 2D and then get them out of the way and do all kinds of other tricks. But the basics are get those levels in, get those grids in, and make everything cross each other so you can see where you're at. Okay, so let's make an elevation. Let me close out of these and get to my first floor. Okay, so all of the different view types we're going to make are on that view tab. So starting with the elevation, there's two options in here. Framing elevation is for when we're working with structure, so you can ignore that one. We're just going to use the regular elevation. And it's bringing in our Walters and Wolff elevation bubble. And you can see as I move it from inside to outside the building, it looks at it. It's intuitive. It knows by default where you want to look. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick to place it. It asks me if I want to do another one. I'm just going to hit escape. I'm going to show it to you first. We're going to walk through this again too. So don't worry about trying to do it right this sec. So you place the bubble and you pick on it. Hopefully the crop region visible is set. If not, you check that because that's how you get your little grips. And I'm just going to make a little elevation right here. And then this is fine where it's at. This is how far into the model it's looking. I'm going to right click, go to elevation view. Here's my crop region. I can pick on it and adjust it. And then I can just finish it off like that. And now I've got that view. And if I wanted, now that I've done those view settings, I could grab this and I could copy it over here. And now this view is set exactly the same way, but looking at the next bay, which is different than if, I'm going to delete that view, then if I come in and, whoops, left some junk behind. If I create one here all over again, that means I can also double click. I didn't adjust the crop region, but if I come in here and I got to do all that, whoops, I do that all the time too. You probably will too. It's okay. It's not critical where this line is. It doesn't have to be right on the center of your symbol. It can be like right there and it's okay. But basically I'm doing this setup all over again. So right click, go to elevation, bring down the crop region, blah, blah, blah. So once you get one set and maybe you want to do all those bays across there for some reason, just make one, get it set, and then copy it. But I'm going to walk through that again. So I'm grabbing those and deleting them. Okay. So again, view tab. This is where you can do it if you haven't done it yet. You want to get that elevation bubble and just place it. You can see that we get a new view in our tree over here, elevation 1A. If I hover over this, it tells me what view name it is. If I pick on it, it tells me, it should tell me right down here is the name. So that name right there is the name in the browser. And then I can grab my grips on each end and go to my view. So with this crop region, now I'm just going to drag the bottom one up. You'll notice that there's a little lightning bolt looking break. These are break lines. So if you had a really long elevation and you just wanted to capture things at each end and you had one big view, you can break it. And then you can stretch these a little bit. You can move them with the double arrow and you can fit it better on your sheet. So that's to kind of help with drafting. So you can move them further apart. If you bring them back together to where it looks like they're going to overlap, it just rebuilds the view. And then I grab that crop region and just drag it down. So because it already created that with the 1/4" scale, if I wanted it to be that, I could change it to a different scale in while there's a Wolf, or I could change templates, or I could change it here if I didn't apply the template. So that's the basics of creating an elevation, whether it's a full elevation or a little one like this. If I decided I didn't want that, I wanted to move it over here, I just pick up that bubble, and now I'm looking at this one instead. So again, you're just looking live at these things, at these whatever your crop region covers. You can change the style if you go to that view, and you could make it shaded if you wanted. The wireframe shows you all the edges, so hidden's
Could you go
good.
over how you got the 2 little tabs? I keep getting the entire elevation when I drop it down.
2 little tabs.
Yeah, you only got a small elevation view.
Okay, so I'll do this and I'll start that again. I'm going to delete that one. Okay, so view, elevation, find my wall. I'm going to grab on the symbol, stretch it in.
Oh, I see. You drag it in. Okay.
And now, yeah, and then in the elevation view, you can adjust the height, if that's also what you're asking about.
That made sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes, you're welcome. So just so to note, so we'll talk a little bit about crop regions again right here. So right now I told that elevation to just look at this much of the model, and I have my crop region visible, which are some settings over here or down here. Crop region, hide crop region, or and do not crop view. So that's the same as what these 2 are. So if I don't crop the view, I can see the whole model for the moment. So maybe I know ultimately I just want my view to show this, but I need to see something else for some reason. I can leave my crop region there and just tell it don't crop the view for a moment. And again, then I can see the whole building again. If once I've placed this on the sheet, maybe I don't want to see my crop region anymore because it bugs me, then I can just turn off the crop region. So, you know, that's nice to know that even though you just see this, if you do need to see the whole building, you don't have to go switch to another view somewhere else. You can just tell it, don't crop it for me for a sec. I want to see something, and then, okay, go ahead and crop it. So crop regions, I can show you that in the floor plan if we just go back again too real quick. I'll turn on the crop region, and same kind of thing. Like if I only wanted to show this much of the building, I'm telling it to crop the view. I say, pardon me, don't crop it, or crop it. So this depends on what you need to do. What do we do? Okay, back to the first floor.
Can you walk
And I'm
through
going to
how to
hide that
make
crop region.
Can you walk through how to make that copy of the elevation one more time?
Yes. Okay. So once you get one set up, yeah, that's right. Let's go back to that. So we get this one set up. Yep. Okay, that's what I want. Okay, great. So you can pick on it and use the copy command, and you can also do a Control-C like normal cut and paste or copy and paste. So now I just did a Control-C, Control-V, and then just grab it and move it to where I want. Or I can pick on it, and on the Modify tab, this is the copy command that we'll be looking at later. So you can use that same command here, and you could copy this. And then if you want to do it all the way down the wall, before you start copying, go up here and select multiple. It's not on by default. So let's try that again. Duplicate. Let me try this again. That should be fine. You should be able to copy this. Yeah, I don't know why it gave me that. So now I can just copy these all the way down. And now I'm getting all these new views created over here that I can go back and rename. And they're all looking at that part of the model, or you need to just adjust them. You can adjust it here. So if I adjust the crop region here, it will adjust it in the plan view as well. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So I just fixed the crop region there because I was kind of messy with my copying. So let's see, which one was that? Was this one. So when I adjusted that in the elevation, you can see that it fixed it fixed it in plan because it is that live crop region. So right now this crop region is cutting through here. Say I can fix it here if I want, or I can go to the elevation view and fix it here. You know, it's probably better to fix it in plan so it's nice and everything's nice and centered up. But I fixed it there. So now my crop region's over here, but I can still move the symbol separate from that. And there's still that crop region. So if the symbol does, sometimes there are tight squeezes for trying to, you know, where maybe you can't fit the drafting part of it. So maybe I have to move my symbol for some reason. But when I highlight it, you can see that I'm still just capturing this area. So don't worry about the symbol staying with it if it doesn't need to, because this is the main cutting information right here.
I'm getting an error
Again, you can just,
every
I
time
am too.
copy.
Probably getting
and what's it
error I am.
saying?
Saying selection cannot be copied. To duplicate elevation, copy the elevation symbols in a plan view.
I'm getting the same.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did that here and it popped up for a second. So if I copy it one way, I think it was how I copied it. I'm gonna go all the way back and see if I can duplicate that error again too. And so I can go undo, copy, undo, undo. Okay, so what I had done was I grabbed it and did copy. Well, the first one I did copy paste. Yeah, when I did that, to me, I just tried it again and then it was okay. So I don't know, if you do it a second time and it's still doing it, let's take a look. You can share your screen.
Yeah, definitely still cannot get past it.
Okay, so let's go ahead and share your screen and let's see what's going on. Oh, that's the big elevation. Okay, it might, that's because that's a full elevation. That's not the one. Try making your own and then let's copy that one. I'm not sure if that's because of something, that's a full elevation that was already in the model. Let me see if I can even copy it on mine.
No, I just created this one.
Yeah. Oh, you did? Oh, that is, okay. Okay, go ahead and, I thought that was the full elevation, but I guess it's not, right? Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead and do the copy command.
I'll do that. So after that, do I just click anywhere?
Yeah, sure. Pick 2 points. To duplicate, okay. Go ahead and cancel that and grab, instead of selecting it the way it did, do a window around the whole symbol. Now try copying, or do a crossing. Grab it, we want to get that whole thing. Try doing it, going right, there you go. Now copy it and see if that lets us. It might be the way we're selecting it.
Oh, okay.
Because it did do it to me like that one time.
Ah, okay. So
There you go. Yeah, it's weird. It's there's 2 different parts to the symbol. So if we're not selecting the whole symbol, I think that's why it did it to me at first as well, as I didn't select it correctly.
mm-hmm.
But if you make sure that you're correct, see, when we just do that part, it doesn't want to, when we just pick on the arrow or the triangle part, it wasn't working. But if you pick on the whole symbol, you should be okay.
Yes. Yeah. Seems like the difference is clicking on the right-hand side and then extending over to the left versus just clicking on it or going from up or down to lower. It won't grab it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a temporary thing. Just, yeah, change the way we're selecting it. Alrighty, good.
Oscar, I was having the same issue too, and now that I did it that way, it worked.
Okay, great. Good. Okay, so that was creating the elevation. So now we can look at, if everybody's good to go, we'll create a section. So again, same thing on that view tab. Section cut, and then just pick 2 points where you want your section to be cut. It shows you your little crop grips, and you can bring it in. And it creates that view over here in the browser. If I want a section here, I'll just do view section, pardon me. I can just do a little short section here. And then I can grab my grips. And then what you'll see, a couple of things I want to show you here. So I'm going to move it over a little bit because it's in the way of that bubble. So right now, if I pull this crop region in, right now I'm just telling it cut here through these horizontals, and that's all I want to see. So if I go to this view, I'm not going to see a vertical beyond. I don't see anything but what I'm cutting through. But if I adjust it by picking on it and grabbing that little crop line there, go to view now, and now I can see the vertical. So sections, let's see what else about a section. You can grab it and you can grab the grips, and even though the drafting symbol is still just there, now my view is cutting through the whole building. I can pick on it and just stretch it back down here and go to it. But again, if I want to say don't crop the view, I can still see the whole building. And then I can tell it crop that view again. The symbol comes with a little break so that you can make it pretty. If you want to make one section and then move it around the building to look at other things, you could bring it over here and you can rotate it. And I'm just going to type in 90 and move it, and we're going to talk about rotate later. And now I'm looking at this wall, and now I can check things this way if I needed to, depending on what the purpose of the section is. And I'm just going to do a Control-Z to go back to where I was. So the other thing to point out is now that I've created this section right here, if I go to this elevation, that section callout now shows up. So it knows everywhere where it lives. And now I can grab the height of it here if I want. Just do some adjustments and say, I just want to look through this part. If I go back and do that, so that it's looking, go back one more. Okay, so now, this is where it's really looking, even though the drafting symbol is just there. If I go to this view, I can also grab that crop region here and shrink it down to just what I want to see. And now, if I pick on it here, there's my little crop region. So everything crosses each other in the different views. So we'll walk through that again. We'll make a section again. If you want to make it, I'm just going to delete that. If you want to make it on your little elevation so you can see how it shows up, just grab that section tool, pick 2 points, adjust that bar clip line to where you want to see. Maybe put a little break in the drafting line. And then if you go to that view, again, right click, go to view. A lot of times you can just double click. I think it's, yeah, you can just double click the section symbol if you want. Grab that crop region. So one of the things you'll notice right now is the text is really huge. And that's because we haven't set the scale of this section view yet. It didn't have a template applied to it by default, but I can come over here and change it to 1/4 inch equals a foot. I can grab the little dot on this level and adjust it and bring things in for drafting purposes. So little stuff to mess with there. But getting that cropped to where you want is just understanding how to control what you're seeing is important. So that's a section view. So now we can make a couple of different kinds of detail views. In that section view, we could create a call out here that's looking at it. It's a section detail. So in Revit, they're called call outs. They're not details. They're not detail bubbles. They're call outs. And this has our little, a Walters and Wolf settings as well. So on that view tab, if I select call out rectangle, over here, this is just in our drawings. Again, you're not going to see this in an architect's model necessarily, but you can see our templates, and you can go right to the full, and then you just draw your little window. You can pick on that, and it has little grippies for rubber bandy kind of thing, and then, you know, pick on it, right click, go to view. I'm going to delete that. If you're in somebody else's model, you should still be able to just create a call out, and it just takes whatever their settings are. It at least gets you to what you need to see. And then it may not look as nice as this, but it still gets you what you need. Go to that view and then set that scale. Whoops, turn off our template. Set that scale to 12 inches equals a foot is the same thing as 1:1. And then you should be good to go with a full-size detail. If you want to create a call out on an elevation view, you can do a couple of different ways. You can create the call out like we just did and do a rectangle, and it'll make a little elevation view. Oops. I just double clicked it. You'll see that when I did that, I went to editing mode into border editing mode, which we don't really need. So I'm just going to cancel that. And right click, go to view. So I get a blow up of that elevation. But I'm going to delete that. And you can also do a section. And in our projects, again, you can use our little templates here, but you can do this no matter what. But now when I pick 2 points, I actually get a little section cut detail symbol. And I have the little flip grip. Oh, I didn't talk about the flip grip in a full section, but there's the flip grip. So you can just switch which way you're looking with your view. Tab. Sometimes if you try to select something and it won't let you, just hit tab until you get what you want. So there's a lot of tabbing in Revit. If there's a lot of stuff in congested or whatever. So again, like if you try to come over to this, let's see if I pick on something else. And yeah, just hit tab if it won't let you grab it to where you get your grips. If I pick on here, like right now I picked close to it and I can't grab it. But if I hover there and hit tab, then it highlights it and then I can select it. Okay, so walking through those different details again, I'm going to delete this. We'll go back to the section view. Delete this. So in a section view, if you want to create a section detail, on the view tab, go to call out rectangle. You can use a template if there is one. You'll see that until I get big enough for the bubble radius to have its curves, it's just a little square. So it depends on the settings in the project. Sometimes you can't get can't get around that. Sometimes depends on the settings. And you can just drag that around. Now you have your detail view. Go to that view, set the scale. This one has the template, but if it did not, I would tell it to be 12 inches equals a foot. So as you're collecting all these views, and we'll still stay on the detail view, I'm not going away from that. You could create your sheets. Here's my new sheet. And then now that I created that detail view, I can put it on the sheet. I can adjust the crop region, double click to activate that view. See, now that I'm making it smaller here, it's going to turn into a small square on that wall section because this is a live cut. So I actually just placed that view on that sheet, but it's still a live cut. So now back in my wall section, it turned into a little square because I made it such a small crop region. So that's, sometimes there's a little give and take in Revit. So we cut the wall section. We created the section detail cut. We created a sheet. We can create a sheet and put it on a sheet. We're going to walk through making a sheet again when we get into dimensioning. So that's doing it on a wall section. You can do that same thing on the elevation. Okay. So the same thing on the elevation. Just make your little rectangle, or go to what looks like it's going to be a section, but instead just tell it, instead of the section being selected, grab the detail. That's in our set. And again, you can flip that. One moment. Okay. So any questions so far on any of the detail views or section views? Everybody cruising along? Let's see. Let's talk about creating a 3D view. That's really easy. Oh, yes.
Sorry, I missed how to put the detail on a sheet.
Okay, so we'll do that again right now, and then we'll go over it again, but just to show you, when you're ready to make a sheet, down here in the sheet section, if you're in one of our projects and you right click and you select new sheet, our title block will be available. If you're in somebody else's project, you can load in our title block. If you're working in someone else's model and you want our title block in there, the title block is a family that can be loaded. And once it's loaded, it can be available here for you. So you just pick OK, and now it's created that sheet. And that sheet is not categorized yet, so it just lives down here under these question marks. So now I've created the sheet. Now I just want to expand the part of my browser where that detail shows up, and then just drag it onto the sheet. And once it's there, again, if I don't, right now you can see all these borders on it. That's because the crop region is visible. So first I could just say, I don't want the crop region visible. Let's see, is this annotation crop? Oh, that's just the viewport. Okay. Oh yeah, that's just temporary. But you know, you probably still need to crop it, or if you hide that crop region, you might be able to get it on there without messing with the bubble. But I still need to adjust that crop region. So I'm going to go ahead and make it visible, and I can double click or I can right click to activate. That allows me to select that crop region, and then I can just do that if I wanted, and then hide it, and then deactivate that view. So that's like having your paper space and model space again. It's like right now we're in 100% paper space, and I can't touch anything. I can double click or right click to activate. Now I'm working through that window. Or I can just go straight to that view. Now you can see that detail view lives on that sheet. I can just double click and go to that view. So again, you just create a new sheet and then place your view on that sheet. So we're going to look at that again, like when we get into dimensioning, because if you want to make it like an enlarged plan and you want to put some dimensions on it and throw it on a sheet, we'll do that again. I don't think I have sheet creation in that intro, so I should put that in there in the document. Okay. So to create a 3D view, that's a single click step. So when I pick 3D view and say pick default 3D view, mine's already in here. Let's see. Why won't you make me a, let me rename this. I'll just call it old. Okay, 3D view, default 3D view. It's not using my username. Usually, I wonder if it's because I'm not in a work shared environment. That's weird. Usually when you create a new 3D view, it puts your username behind it. It's very strange today. It's not doing the same thing. So, and that's fine. That's, when you're working in a work shared environment and a lot of people have their own views, that's nice. If you're working on your own, you can call this view whatever you want. So typically what I do is, I'll go in and I'll make that first 3D view if it's in somebody else's model and I want to see everything. So you don't know what you're going to get in another person's model. In their 3D views, they might have things turned off, things they don't want you to see, cleaned up, nice views or something like that. And you might not see everything that you need to see. So the best way to make sure you're seeing everything that's in that file is to create that new default 3D view, and it will have everything on, nothing hidden, and you'll be able to see it all. And then you can, from that 3D view, what I also like to do is I like to have a section view. So I'll create that first 3D view, and then to create a copy, I right-click, duplicate view, and now I have another one, and then I'll rename this one. And when you go to rename it, you can't have the curly braces on it. It will tell you it doesn't like it. So it's allowed to name it with them, but I'm not. We're not. So I'm just going to rename this section. So far I haven't changed what I'm actually looking at. All I've done is taken that default 3D view and created a duplicate of it. and then renamed it section. So now I'm going to make my section view current, and I'm going to put a big 3D section box on it by right-clicking on that ring. And I'm going to pick a view to orient it to, and this is not critical. So I'll just walk through it first, and then we're going to make them again together anyway. But I'm just going to say base it on the first floor. And what that does is it gives me this 3D section box just looking at the first floor. But I can still grab these grips and look at whatever I want. And the nice thing about this is it lets you look at the inside. Like, it makes it easy to get stuff out of the way. And now I can see the inside, and I can change it to shaded, fine detail, or whatever. And get a look from the inside. So I like section boxes for that, and for other reasons when I'm modeling. So again, to create that first view, default 3D view is really easy because you just go to the View tab and pick that button, and it makes it for you. But to make your section view, or to rename any view, you can right-click and rename this one if you want, or you can right-click and duplicate it. And when you go to duplicate, there's duplicate and there's duplicate with detailing. In this type of view, those options don't really matter. But if you were duplicating a floor plan, and the floor plan had all kinds of dimensions and things on it that you also want in your other view, in your copy, you would use duplicate with detailing, and that just means it brings the annotation with it. But in this kind of view, it doesn't matter. So we did 3D, duplicate, duplicate view. So now we have our copy, and then just right-click and rename it to whatever you want. And if you forget to take out the curly braces, it will give you a message saying you can't have special characters like this, even though it does. So go figure. So just pick a name that works for you. And then to make it that section view is when you right-click. And this time I'll orient it to an elevation view that exists. So I'll orient it to the south elevation. And now when I spin that by holding down the Shift key and my middle mouse key, you can see that it's mimicking the cut, the elevation and its cut with that crop region. And then I can go in, I can still do whatever I want with it. So very handy. It also makes it easier to spin when you're not looking at as much stuff. The Las Vegas Convention Center footprint is huge, so I use these a lot so that when I'm spinning it, I'm not spinning this huge model, I'm spinning just a little bit of it. So that can really help focus. And speaking of spinning, when you are spinning a model in 3D, with again holding down Shift and your middle mouse button, if you're in a really large model, sometimes when you hit that and you start spinning it, everything goes out of view and you can't find it. So if that happens, just hit the little home button up above the view cube. And then to spin more closely in, spin the model more closely in, pick on an element in the model and then spin it. And you'll see that that becomes the center point of your rotation. And that makes it a lot easier to deal with sometimes. It can get crazy. So again, that was the right-click duplicate, and then rename it if you want, and then orient that view by right-clicking. If you don't right-click right on the ring, you won't necessarily get that option to orient it to a view. So that's why I find that if I do it right over the ring, then I get that orient to view option. And then you can pick any one of these, any one of your existing views. So the last thing before we take a little break is exporting these views. So sometimes people want to export stuff to DWG. That's really easy to do once you have the views created. So if I want to export the first floor, I can make it active. I can make it current by opening it. And then I do File, Export, CAD, DWG. I'm going to walk through this a couple times. And I get my options here. I say Next. And then I can save it, you know, with the automatic long name, automatic short, manual, all that. and it will export it to AutoCAD. So I'll go through that again and then get into the detail of the settings. So to export one view, you want to make it current. And we'll talk about exporting a batch of views. So say you create a whole bunch of elevations and you want to get them into CAD, create all those views first. We're going to talk about doing those in one export. But right now we'll just talk about exporting this one view. So if I go to File, Export, CAD Format, DWG, it brings up that dialog box. So right now as a little preview, it's just saying it's going to export this one view. Up here, we have this DWG export template set. You're not necessarily going to have that, or you're not going to have that in somebody else's model. It might come in with just in-session export setup. So if I click on the little ellipses, these are all these options for when you go to export. And maybe you don't really care. You're not worried about layers. You just need to get it into CAD, and that's fine. But you may want to check the General tab. By default, when you're working in Revit 2018, it's exporting to AutoCAD 2018, and maybe you need it to export to an earlier version. So if you do export it and you go to open it in an older version of AutoCAD and it won't open, you want to go back to Revit and export it, or change that export parameter or value here. Walters and Wolf, if you're in one of ours and you go to export, it is set to 2013. Another difference is, you know, without any changes, it's just looking at all the layers and the colors just as they are. In the Walters and Wolf one, it sets them all to 0 for the most part for layers, sets it to white for the lines. So we can look at the difference, you know, we can look at that if you want to mess around with exporting to different DWGs. I'm going to get AutoCAD going. So I'm going to cancel out of that, and I'll use the WW export. So that's just a little something up here that just to understand that that exists. But most of the time, you don't have to worry about it. So it's set to current view. So I say next. And then I like to uncheck this other stuff because I just want my one view. I don't want all these other things going along with it. And I can leave it with the default long name. Again, I can tell it automatic short and let Revit give it a name, or I can give it my own name. I'll just do automatic. Well, I already have an automatic short, automatic long. Yeah, I already have one. So I'll go ahead and export that. And then we'll open that in CAD. And it takes a little while for my AutoCAD to open. Probably trying to read on the server. Okay, so let's just grab this guy and open it. And there's my 2D CAD file with all the shapes. Okay, so that was exporting the current view and with the Walters and Wolf setup. If you decided you had a bunch of views down here and you needed to export them to CAD or something, you can first, the workaround that I have for that is first I'll create a print set, but I'm not going to print. So I go File, Print, and down here I choose Selected Views, and I'm going to make a selection set. I'm going to select Check None to make sure nothing is selected that I can't see. I'm not interested in sheets. I'm just interested in some elevations. So maybe I want to grab either my little elevations or I'll grab my full elevations. And then I'm going to save this as a group or a set called elevations. So now that set's in my little list, and I pick OK here to save that step, but I close without printing. Because I'm going to use that set when I go to Export, CAD, DWG, and now in this drop down, I'm going to grab my elevation. So now instead of exporting each of those one by one, I can just do it in one step after creating that set. And then when I say next, it'll export them all. So that's a good time saver right there if you need to do a bunch of these exports for yourself or for somebody else. So again, that's going to the print command, going down and doing selected views and sheets, getting the sheets or views or whatever that you want and saving as a set, picking OK to that step, but closing out of the print without printing. then File, Export, and then that set will be available right here.
And Amy, would that be the best way to do it if you're just exporting to like PDF?
PDFs, you can just go ahead and print. So in that case, if you're doing a print set for PDFs, I would just print, grab Bluebeam, and you can still create your set, but use the Bluebeam printer and go ahead and print at this phase, at this point.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, you can still create your set, but, and I think if you look in theirs, they have a full approval set by default. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure how they control that. They have that one in there. That's not, I think that's from Walters and Wolf, not from Revit. But anyway, yeah, grab whatever you want, save it as a set, and then run that OK with the OK, and it'll print to PDF. Okay, and you can also do the same thing. Like if you want to export your 3D, you can export this to a DWG as well. There's other export options, but if somebody you work with needs CAD, any of this stuff can be exported to CAD. Okay, so if there aren't any questions at this point, we can do a little 10-minute break. I think we're doing okay. Let's just look at our agenda here. Because up next is editing, the editing tools, and doing some annotations. And when we do that, we'll again go over doing some sheet work, and then talking about customizing that workspace. So we'll probably go through this actually pretty quickly, but okay. So I'm gonna let this thing keep rolling, and I'm just gonna mute myself this time because I forgot to mute myself on Monday. And then everybody go ahead and take a 10-minute break. I'll see you back at 3:25. Okay, I'm gonna give everybody another minute or so to get back. Okay. So at this point, you guys have been good about jumping in with questions, so hopefully everybody's doing okay. But everything that we've been talking about is in this document. I haven't put it on the wiki yet, but it does exist on our server. And what it has, it's a PDF, and I attached videos to it. So if I open this PDF in Bluebeam, give it a second. Whoops. You'll see little paper clips next to certain areas, certain sections. So if you double click on that paper clip and you pick open, it will open a video that's just a little short video of that particular step. So it'll walk you through it just like we did today. So those are little videos that are attached. Whoops, you can just close that, but they're throughout this Revit document. So that'll hopefully be a resource for you. So right now it's on the server in the same location as the Revit files. But if it, and so what I'm telling people for now until I test it is that it might be, oops, wrong one. It might be the fastest way to use that might be to copy it to your local, because it is kind of big, 159 megs, because it has those videos attached. But copy it to your local drive to use it. I'm not sure how it'll behave once we put it on the wiki and it has to go through VPN and all that. So these are not videos on YouTube. They're videos that are attached right to the PDF. So you can open them right from there. So all of the stuff is covered in that document. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about the editing tools. The basic editing tools, I should say. If you do need to get into a model and move some things around, I just advise be careful, because you don't know how somebody else has modeled it and if they tied things together or whatever. But we'll still just go over the basic commands, and we can look at them when we're doing annotations as well. If you're used to snaps in AutoCAD, you also have snaps in Revit. On the Manage tab, there's the little snaps magnet here. And that's where all your snap things are. So when I worked in AutoCAD, I usually had just like an OS mode 25 endpoint quadrant, and I can't remember node or something like that, because I didn't want all the conflicting things. But I've never really had a problem with that in Revit, so I leave mine at the default. Revit finds so much and does so much on its own intuitively that I find myself also just one-handed drafting now, whereas in AutoCAD I used to always have a left hand on the shortcut keys and right hand on the mouse. I do it's a lot more it's not leisurely, but it's a lot less of all of that typing and all of that kind of stuff, because Revit does do so much already for you. Even if I select an item, you can see temporary dimensions, and even if I want those temporary dimensions to be real dimensions, I can just pick on that little symbol and I have a dimension, and all I did was pick twice. I didn't do any command, I didn't go into anything, I'm just simply picking it. Question? Nope, okay. So we'll talk about those temporary dimensions again. But there's so much that Revit does that I just kind of roll with it the way it is, and it's pretty cool, pretty intuitive. So most of the editing tools you would need are going to be on Modify or Annotate. So we'll start with Modify, because that's where all of the action tools are, like Move and Align, which is my favorite Revit tool. So in AutoCAD, you start the command, select an item, move it, or I don't know if you still have to do that, but that's how it was a long time ago when I used to work in it. But in Revit, you pick the item first and then tell it what you want to do with it. So on that modified tab, there's the modify panel, and these are all those main commands. And you'll see that I have added these to my quick access toolbar, which we'll talk about at the end. So right now, I've activated, I've touched an element. It's done this contextual tab. It knows I want to do something, so it brought this up for me. I can move it by, picking a base point and picking another point. I can move it by picking a base point and typing in how far I need it to go. So there's a little live dimension. I'm going to just undo that. I can just pick on it and drag it to move it. I can pick on it and edit that dimension to move it. So all of that was just very few touches, very few clicks. But with the move command, it already wants you to move stuff on its own. You see it already has a little move where my mouse is, which is the same as that. So you can do a lot of moving without actually using the move command. The align command, I'm going to create some drafting here. I'm going to just draw a line. My little line command. Oops, I want it to be continuous. I didn't follow through with it. There we go. So say I wanted this line to align with the edge of that mullion. I'll go modify align, select the edge of that mullion, and then just pick that. So I didn't have to use move, base point, second point, or any of that. It's just align this with that. So I use that a lot in Revit. It cuts out a lot of picks and clicks. You can't align walls. If I wanted to align this wall with that reference plane, that's one of the few limitations. I don't believe it'll let me grab that wall. Yeah, I can't even tabbing. I'm just tabbing till I get the wall highlight. Oh, it did. If I grab it right, it will let me. Okay, great. So align is awesome. There's copy, which we talked about earlier. So if you select the item and copy it, and again, just like move, I can either pick 2 points or I can just type in a value with that temporary dimension. So these get to be very handy, these temporary dimensions. Let's see, we've got rotate. I think I'll show you some of these just on some line work instead of a wall. So I'm just going to create some, let me get that continuous. Create a line here, line here. Let's create a circle. Okay, so if I want to rotate this, I pick on it, I select the rotate command. It finds the midpoint of your element by itself, but maybe I want to rotate it around this intersection. So I can just pick and drag that grip, let go with my mouse. Now I can pick, and I can either pick another point, or again with those dimensions, I can type in 45. So it rotated about that point by and 45 degrees. So it works a little bit different. I want to say compared to AutoCAD, it's been don't work in AutoCAD as much anymore, but it seems like it took me a while to understand the difference in the rotate command. But if I do want to do it like with the base point, I picked and dragged that rotate point to the end, and I can pick the other end and then say, I'll rotate it to that. So I can also just pick on it, and now that it already has an angle, I can just say 60. So I didn't even do a command. I just picked on it and edited that because it has these temporary dimensions for me. I can pick on it and say it's 20 feet and then rotate it. So you can do stuff with the commands again, or you can use those temporary dimensions. And get a line back in there. With mirror, there are a couple of options. You can mirror by picking an axis, or you can draw an axis. So if I want to mirror this by picking an axis. That's the green line option. And you just pick it, that line, and it mirrors about that line. If I want to mirror it about 2 points that I pick, I could pick on it, grab this other one, and just draw 2 lines. And now it mirrored. Well, that was not a good example. Let's do it over here. Oh, I went out of my crop region, my annotation crop region. So we do mirror, pick 2 lines, and let's do this. So whether you have there a line there that you need or not, you have a couple different options. Let's see. So this one here is trim extend, which is, to me, in my mind, is like filleting. That is the one shortcut key I actually did set in my Revit. So you can customize your shortcut keys. And I was so used to FF equaling fillet 0 in my AutoCAD that I made my trim extend equal FF, and it even shows you my little shortcut key in parentheses next to there. So we can talk about this. We'll talk about the command, but I'll also just show you on that note that if you go into options and you go to user interface, keyboard shortcuts is right here. It's really easy to customize. So I know the command is trim extend, so I just start typing to search for it. And then I come down here and you can see it's already assigned, but if it wasn't assigned, I just come down here and type in FF and assign. And there's my shortcut key. I pick OK, and it's ready for me right now. I don't have to reinitialize the PGP file or any of that kind of stuff. So again, if you want to make your own shortcut keys, once you get used to these commands and you like having your hand on the keyboard, you can come into that user interface keyboard shortcuts and grab your command and set it to what you want. So fillet 0 is as I call it, or trim extend. If you have 2 lines, I keep going outside the reason it's disappearing, I'll just show you really quick. If I make the crop region visible, you can see the crop region, and then the annotation crop is the same apparently. Where's the annotation? Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay, my mistake. Okay, so yeah, so there I went outside the crop region. It didn't have to do with annotation. Annotation will crop your notes. If your note falls outside of that border, all of a sudden it won't show up. If you're ever wondering if you have a note outside or something and it's outside that double line, that annotation crop region, that was only showing up when I hovered, it's because of that. You can make it bigger to include your annotation. So that's adjustable. Okay, we'll go back inside here. So if I do this, and I have a line here, and I do that trim extend, it does that. If you do want to do a fillet with a radius, we'll look at that, and that's in another place. That's in another command when we're in annotate. So that's trim extend, so it just joins your lines together. There's array, which I hardly ever use in Revit, scale, and a couple of other trim extend options here. There's splitting an element and splitting an element with a gap. So if you have a circle and you want to split it, you could pick your 2 points. And now you have 2 halves. Okay, let go. Not 2 halves that are separated. I should be able to just delete the 1/2. There we go. But I still come back in here and grab that grip and bring it back around if I want. So that's the split element. I use that occasionally. We've got delete, which is like erase. There's no erase in Revit, it's all delete. And pin and unpin. So pin and unpin are good when you have things in your model and you're working with either yourself and you tend to accidentally move things, or with other people. When we'll link in an architect's model, we typically pin that in place, and that means it can't be moved. So if I pick on this wall right now, I can move it. I'll do a little undo. I'll pick on that wall and I'll just pin it. Now there's a little push pin. Now I can't drag it, which is a good thing because then I don't break it. But I can unpin it there or unpin it up here, and then I can edit it again. I mean, so those are the main ones. We didn't talk about offset yet. Let's talk about offset.
Amy, I have a question.
Sure.
So when you're looking at your floor plan and you zoom into like your curtain wall, so if you zoom into one of those, yeah, see how clear your extrusions show up? Mine do not do that. Mine look like black blobs.
Okay, so go to, I found it on the View tab. I have it on my shortcut key. or shortcut bar, but go to the View tab, and there's this Thin Lines button over here.
Okay.
And set that. And so the reason it's like that is it's going to show you what it looks like when you're plotting. But other than that, I never have that on. So once you set it once in Revit, it should remember that every time you open it from now on. Because that is really annoying. It used to not stick. Yeah. So that's your answer there.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So I will draw, let me get one other thing in here. Let's do a little ellipse. Okay. So if you're drafting in here and you need to do some offsetting, a couple ways to do it. So if we're in the Modify tab and we use the Offset tool, again, you have options up here. They're not at the bottom of the screen, so you just need to look up here, and you can say, I want to offset 6 inches. And when you hover over, it's going to let you know which options are available for offsetting. And then you just pick. Once it's highlighted the way you want it, you just keep picking. And there it goes. But I don't use that as much as I use offsetting. Oops, I didn't mean to grab that. In another way. So we're gonna switch from the Modify tab here, kind of segue into the Annotating Drawing tab or option. So we looked at some general tools. You don't always need them. We're gonna look at some drawing tools, and then we're gonna do a little talk about temporary dimensions and just ways where you don't even hardly need some of these tools sometimes. But going back to offset, you can offset there. So you could draw a line, you can offset it 6 inches. But if you already know that you need to lay out, maybe the edge of slab is supposed to be 6 inches behind this, you can use this on the draw palette. There's this pick lines option. So I'm not in any command right now. I'm saying I want to pick lines to create something. I'm going to say I need it to be something to be 6 inches off of this thing I'm going to pick. And then I hover to the back of that mullion, and you can see, hopefully you can see those little dashed blue lines. And because they were on the side that I wanted, look, it's still giving me options. Where else do you want to offset? Now I have this line there, and now I can pick and drag it. So I didn't do the line command. I didn't do the offset command. All I did was the pick lines command and put a dimension in, hovered, and got that. It drew the lines for me. So a lot less commands, a lot less when you're trying to construct. You don't need construction lines. You don't have to do so much. So if I know that my jam is 1 inch off of here and there is no jam for me, I could go into that annotate. There's my detail line, and we'll get into that again, and then pick lines. So, and then I can say, okay, 1 inch. I need something 1 inch off of this. So we were talking about being on the Modify tab and using the offset command, which is fine. Sometimes you need it that way. But if you need to draw something that's offset from something else, I would say go to annotate, and then we're going to go into this detail line command. So instead of saying in the command line rectangle, I want to draw a rectangle, I want to draw a circle, I want to do this or that, in Revit, you just go to detail line and then choose from the little palette what type of thing you want to draw. So line comes up by default. There's a rectangle and polygons. Again, how many sides do you need it to be? I want it to be 8 sides. Circle. So all of those tools are here. Arc, different ways to draw arcs. And this is where you can do a fillet radius. So again, we're on the annotate detail line. Okay, come back. Oh, it's hiding now. If you can't find it, go to the green tab. And that's where all these options are. So to do a fillet radius, this is where you can do that. So if I need to put a radius on this shape, I can use the fillet arc, tell it radius, and tell it 1/4 inch. Then I pick my 2 lines. Detail line, go to that palette, and hover till you see fillet arc. So you have start end radius, center ends, tangent. So there's a bunch of different things. You can make a spline. But this pick lines is the best. So now if I knew I needed something offset from that, I can do pick lines, 1 inch. And I can either select one thing at a time, or if I hit tab, I can select the whole thing. So it just did a big offset outline for me just by hitting tab. Hover and no tab, just one, hit tab, it finds the whole profile and does that for you. So I don't know if you'll ever need that, but it's, and when I'm working in Revit, I use the offset a lot when I'm trying to do layout. The pick lines and the offset. Pick lines will let you trace an item. So when I'm creating the Revit detail family, part families, not the detail families, but the part families, I will, let's just go into one really quick. So this is the frame family, and I'm going to go into a part. I'm going to the vertical mullion, vertical plan view. And in these parts, we have a very basic 3D shape to represent the metal extrusion space it takes up. And then this is just a 2D DWG underlay or import. So it keeps the part lightweight, but when we cut through it, we can see it. So when I'm first creating that extrusion shape, I will tell it create extrusion, and then I just use the pick line, and it highlights what I want. So I'm not drawing, I'm just using pick line and letting it find what it finds. And so it's very fast. If I want, I can also, I don't do it to this extent, but you can use pick lines and then tab, and it'll find that like even a whole shape for you. So pick lines is really handy. Saves a lot of time. Don't want to save anything there. And don't want to save anything there. Okay. So that was annotate, detail line. Here are your drawing tools. Now, this is, when you go to draw, this is where you set your line style too. The line style types are controlled somewhere else. So whatever's been set up in the project will be available to you right here. So if you know you want to draw a hidden line, you can do the line command, select hidden, and pick on it. You can pick on it afterwards and go back and change it. So in all of this stuff that I've been doing, we'll go back to talking about the dimensions, the temporary dimensions, and all these things that show up. There are dimensions, there are grips on the dimensions, the little blue dots. So Revit just throws these dimensions in where it thinks you might need them. Here's an arc, but I can adjust this arc in a couple of different ways just by picking on it and saying, no, it should be 12 inches for that radius. And see, so that's the length by default. If I change this, it changes the length for me. Let's see if I can do 65. So I can edit that arc just by picking on those. So a lot of things have these temporary dimensions. So no editing, no commands. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's just really handy. So you can modify by using those temporary dimensions, and we'll get into actual dimensioning and show how dimensions drive things as well. So if I want to add dimensions, I go to the Annotate tab as well, and you can see all of these dimension styles up here, or dimension formats. Aligned and linear seem like they would be about the same. I don't ever use linear because it restricts you to just horizontal or vertical, whereas aligned will let you do anything. So when I pick on aligned, I can pull a dimension just by selecting. You can see that Revit finds things for you. It even finds the endpoint of that line for me. So I'm just single clicking right now, and I'll just go to here and I will grab these curtain grids and get my dimensions. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, I'm going to move these out of the way. I'm just selecting and dragging. I'm not doing any commands right now. Let's do this. I'm going to go to View, Call Out, Rectangle. and create my call out, which creates my view. And now I'm going to annotate, align, and grab my dimensions. Oh, what scale is that at? Well, that's not a good scale. Let's try 1/4 inch equals a foot. Oh, it made it a full-size detail, that's why. Okay, so I created my call out. I wasn't paying attention that it was using the detail full up there, but no worries, I changed the scale myself. I can grab this dimension, and by the little dot, I can move it out, and it adds the little leader for you. You're never allowed to force dimensions in Revit. It will not let you force it. You can edit it like what it looks like. I can double click on a dimension and I can replace that 5'0" with text, but I can't force a dimension. It will know if you're trying to put a dimension in here, and it will not let you do it. And I could say mod and put that below. I could dimension all the way out. Or if I wanted to come in here and show that rough opening, I'll go to my detail. Oh, sorry, I should do it on here. Annotate detail line, pick 1 inch, give myself a line there, give myself a line over here. I'm tabbing now to get it to highlight. And then I could, I put that dimension from center to center, but what I really wanted on is rough opening. So if I pick on that dimension now, I get my little blue grip in the middle, not the one on the end, but the one in the middle will let me pick it and drag it to that other element, to that joint instead. Then I can double click on that and put RO. So pretty easy to dimension, you just can't force anything. And again, you have these little blue grips. And then I could come in here, put another little dimension on the end. And I could grab this one. I just hit escape to get out of that. I could grab that one and that one. So it will add that leader for you. Double click to edit it. You could put, I don't see a way to do alternate units. Oh, that's in the unit setting of the dimension. So you can create that call out, set the scale, and put your dimensions in it pretty quickly.
How would you
show
line? Oh, how would you show the center line symbol?
Let's see, that's a good question. And I don't know, when I tried to do that before in Revit, there wasn't a really great way to do it. You could put it on the extension line, but it didn't really work well. So that was one of the things I think I still used to just do manually. Is I still drew them in there because it was a carryover from drafting. So if I do detail line and I make it center, and I find, like right now, I could even use my pick to find it. There it is. And then I can drag it out to the point where it starts to look like a center line. And do some drafting here. Let's see, let's try that again. And then I would pull the end of this line. Oh wait, no, if I pull this onto that, then I got my little gap. But that's all manual drafting, and last I knew, making the extension line work as a center line just never seemed to work very well. So I think it got to the point where people just knew, oh, like you could add mod. I'll have to look into that though, and maybe it's gotten better. It's been a while since I've looked at that, but that's a good question. So, you kind of brace things at this point, because the next thing I was going to show you is that, with that dimension going to that element, if I tab over it and select that curtain grid, these dimensions become editable and I can actually change the model. So I've added the dimensions and now I'm driving the model by changing those dimensions. So it just takes a sec to process because it's rebuilding those frames. If I do what I just showed you and I put a center line on here and I associate the dimensions to the center line, I can no longer control that grid with these. So it creates a disconnect to make it look nice, to make it look like what we're used to. If I've completely disconnected my dimension from driving the model at that point. So not a great setup. Oops, didn't mean to do that. because I was deleting the center line, the dimensions that were tied to it wanted to go away too. So to not lose my dimensions, if I pick on that grip and drag it back to there, I still have my dimensions, and then I just have to go in here and see if I can find my center line. There it is, it's hiding under here. So it's a good question, and I will have to do some digging to see if they've come up with something better yet. Because it really is better to keep those dimensions, you know, attached to what you're modeling so that you can take advantage of being able to edit the model by then using those same dimensions. So the model drives the dimension, and then the dimension can drive the model. It's all tied. So the same kind of thing here, like this arc, you saw me earlier, changing this to, I'll change it to 24 inches, and you can change the length. So these are just temporary dimensions. If I want them to be permanent dimensions, again, I can just pick on that symbol. That one isn't a good one because it's on there. There we go, now it's on the outside. So I can look at that and say, yeah, I'm good with that. And I pick on this little symbol, and it actually does the annotating for me. Of course, it's huge right now. Let's change this. Let's change this. Well, I won't do it in this then, but you can change the scale to make it look right. So if we go to align, same kind of thing. These are our options. We can edit the angle. We can edit this dimension here. We can edit this dimension here. And then when we're good with it, we can make it a permanent dimension. Actually, that one's not letting me make that one a permanent dimension on the angle. Only the line is. So it might have some restrictions. But you can mess around with that. 48, 32. Yeah, that one's only making a couple of those available. But without very many commands, you're doing drawing, drafting, annotating. 36 inches. And then leave that on there. So that we talked about, you know, those temporary dimensions we talked about. Aligned, linear is much more restricting. You'll probably find that you like aligned better. I put aligned here, and then angular works the same as any, you know, just like AutoCAD. Annotate. Radial, if you want to put it in there, it's doing the same thing as when we made that temporary dimension permanent. Diameter, arc length is nice because you can pick on this and pick on the two ends. You'll get your arc length. So this one here, I think, I'm wondering if you guys will find this one really, really handy. So spot elevation, I really like this one. I was working on embed sets and dealing with structure a lot. You know, you're in a floor plan, but you need to know where things are. You know, where does it live? So if I do a spot elevation and I select this horizontal, it tells me it's 3'1.5" above 0. So I'm gonna grab my little section and I'm gonna go to that view. And if I do that spot elevation, there's that 3'1.5". So that can be really handy when I bring in the structural model. I think maybe you'll find it handy. So if I want to know where that soffit is on the bottom, annotate, spot elevation, there's our work point, and it's at 12 feet. And then these you can do a little editing. You have some options for those as well. But that's really nice, especially if you're working in a plan, sometimes to be able to pull that information. So there's some good tools there. And when you are creating that dimension, the style is controlled over here in the properties. So depending on what kind of project you're working with, you know, you'll have different settings in there. And that's kind of the stuff that, you know, eventually if we did another Revit class, we could teach people how to make their own custom stuff like that. But this is just to kind of touch on what's there. Sometimes you're just stuck with what comes in the project. If you know how to get in and create a style, or, you know, do your own thing, make it red, make it bold, you can go in here, duplicate, and play with some of those settings. So the dimension styles are controlled there. Okay, so so that's on the Annotate tab. Detail line to get into your detailing. Set your line style here or change it afterwards. All your dimensioning options here. And we'll talk a little bit about creating notes, and then we'll bring in that structure model and show you stuff like that. So if I go to my enlarged view, I got dimension lines all over the place now. To create a text note on the Annotate tab, there's the text, the big A for text. And again, it just opens a little palette with all of your options. Here's your justification. You can choose if you don't want a leader, if you want a leader that has one segment, a leader with two segments, or a radius, like a curved leader. So if I start with no leader, okay, I just start typing and there's my note, and I can move it, and I can drag it out to make it fit, whatever. I can also pick on that same note. Sorry, I'm hitting escape here. Do you want to keep your changes? No. Okay, escape. All right, pick on the note. The contextual tab comes up. I can add an arc. I can add an arc to each side. You can see that now that my note has 2 lines, this is coming off the bottom. I can fix that right here by making it come off the top on both sides. I can remove a leader, add a leader, do a little bit of this to it, drag that over there. So you have some options in here that make it quick to edit. Double click to edit it, whatever you want to do there. Sometimes it's a little finicky, and I don't know why. I think there's still some carryover from what I'm used to from AutoCAD, and I don't do notes a lot in Revit, so sometimes I get annoyed with it, but if you use it enough, it has some nice features. I'll show you if we go outside the crop region, see how it disappears. If you're wondering where your note went, because it's outside of it. You just drag your crop region. Once enough of it's inside of it, it shows up again. If you aren't sure where it went, you can just say, don't crop the view. Oh, there's my note. Grab it, bring it in, crop your view. So if it disappears, it's a crop region thing usually. Okay, so yeah, notes are basic. You can create, again, note styles, text styles are also controlled over here. So if you do want to get in and make your own style, you can mess around with editing a type, duplicate, give it a new name, change it to bold and red or whatever. So that's all in there. But we won't get too much we won't get into that today, but that's where it's controlled if you do want to mess around with it.
Can you just walk through one more time how to get to those? Is it on the annotation tab?
Yeah. So annotate is going to have dimensions, drawing, and text. So you should find a button on there somewhere that's a big A. It's scrunched on mine, I think, because I'm not maximized right now.
Okay, I got it.
But it's got the big A? Okay.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, pick what you want. So if I pick arc, it's going to start the leader for me and then let me type. And then I can go back and change my mind, pick on it, delete that one, and add a segment instead. So it's pretty flexible. If you get something in there and it's not what you want, you can pick on it and change it pretty easily. So annotate for dimensioning, drawing, and text. Okay, so we talked about move, align, offset, rotate, mirror, drawing, the lines and circles, all those things being on that detail line. Easy to edit these when you do get them in. Like a lot of times when I'm doing something like this, I don't bother with, oops, I'm outside the region. I don't bother making it perfect when I put it in there because I know that I'll be able to go back and I just draw it in there, and then I pick on this and say, oh, well, actually I need that to go to there, and then I need, whoops, I just made it a permanent dimension. And then I actually only need it to be 8 foot, and I only need that to be 10 feet. So you can be a little bit lazy when you're first drawing something because you know it's really easy to go back in and change it to something else. We're just using those temporary dimensions. So it's friendly drafting. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so we're just about to the end. We're going to talk about customizing the workspace, but I want to bring in that structural model and show you what I'm talking about. one of the things we didn't really get into yet was talking about links. Okay, so I'm on the first floor and I'm going to link in, and you guys don't have to worry about doing this. I'm just going to do it to get it in here. But I'm going to insert Revit link, and I'm going to grab the structure model. I need to go to my project. Oops. I switched it. So right now you just see our stuff. If you are dealing with a project that has multiple models, what I like to do if I'm linking in somebody else's model is I like to set their models to halftone. This is just telling me that there are nested links in the one that I'm trying to link in. I'm not worried about that. It's fine, it's not going to show up. So you can see some other stuff came in. If we go to 3D, now we see the architect's model. So what I like to do, whether it's in this view or we'll do it in the plan view, is I like to right click, override the graphics by the category is the only option. And I like to set it to halftone so that our stuff shows up nice and bold and other stuff is in there for reference. So if I do that in a floor plan, actually let's go to second floor. I can see how it's wanting, if I pick on like their grid, it's gonna, you see how it selects the whole thing because it's like an XREF, it's like a link. So I'll right click, override graphics. There's probably a template. There's a template. Let me turn off the template. Pick on that. Override graphics by category, halftone. Okay. So now I can see the structure, but I see our stuff solid. So this is what I'm talking about right here. So here's a column, and all it looks like is some little lines because we're on coarse detail. So if I come down here to the detail level, which you can also see up here in the properties, I set it to medium, you'll see that it starts to get a little bit more like the right shape, look right, like an I-beam or I-shape. If I set it to fine, then we get the real shape. So here's a case where I'm at the second floor, I can see the structure, I want to look down to the first floor. So I'm going into my view range and I'm saying, I want to look all the way down through because I want to see what beams are running through. Are they going to show me anything? Okay, maybe not. Let's go to a section view and see what we're dealing with. And I'm going to see, there's my little I-beam. So let's set that to fine. I'm going to pick on it, override category, halftone. You don't have to do that. That's just my personal preference. So if I'm at the second floor and I look down to the first floor, why didn't I see that stuff? Let's see. Oh, because I'm not in wireframe. All right, so now I set it to wireframe. Now I'm starting to see some stuff. So I'm seeing my second floor and my first floor, and I can see some beams and columns happening. And if I want to check where that is, first of all, I can hit tab to select even in their model. It tells me it's a W21 by 44. So you can get information from somebody else's model, hopefully, if they're depending on how they've modeled it, to know what you're working with. And then again, you can, if we go like into a section view, I can pull that spot elevation off the bottom of their beam to find out where it is, or where's their ceiling, or what am I working with and what do I have to watch out for, just for general information. And here's our soffit, so what kind of stuff is going on. So now I have this nice picture of what's going on. If I get these guys out of here, but I've linked in their model, I could come in here, go to view, call out, rectangle, and grab this whole thing and right click to go to that view and pick on their model, right click override. Oh, it made another template. Set that to none, right pick on it, right click, override by category, halftone. Now I have a nice detail of what's going on in that area. And I can tab on these things to find out, what am I working with? Oh, KPFF did this model, I know those guys. Let's see, what is it? You can come in here, you can start to look at what's the structure. Well, it's concrete and steel, 6¼ inch deck, So you get a lot more information, really. You know, you still have to say, you know, find out if you're allowed to trust the model or if the contract documents, the PDF set is really what, you know, is gold. But if you have that PDF set, but you have the model and you can see differences, you know, you can ask questions about it and say, you know, why are there discrepancies, or which one takes precedent, which one's right. This gets you in and lets you see stuff a lot sooner. So if you guys, project managers, anybody like that, can get in and understand how to navigate these views and create views that you can use, and try to use remember if it's one of ours that there are templates set, and we can change that. Actually, you can tell it to not create the view with a template, but I just let it do what it's supposed to do for now. I don't want to mess with what's been set up. It's just, you know, how it is. You can get in and get a lot more information. Set that to find. You know, I don't know, you know, if interiors, if you know, stuff like this is helpful, you know, creating views and, you know, like where you guys are going with that. But, you know, I hope that like this stuff that, you know, you're seeing today helps you feel comfortable getting into the model, navigating around, you know, project managers or anybody. I know Pedro and Laverne, he uses this for estimating. Right now, we still have our estimators do their own takeoffs, and we have our sales model guys doing their thing, and then we compare notes. So Pedro will go in and create his own elevations and export them to CAD, and then do his own takeoffs right off of that. And so he can use it. So he's learned how to navigate it and create his own views, and it's been a big help, I think, for him, especially when the PDFs are not great or really not organized. You can learn how to get in and just get to what you need. So I'll just touch a little bit on customizing the workspace, and then if we can circle back around to anything else, we've got, you know, plenty of time. I don't mind sitting here if some people are done and want to leave, and other people want to sit and ask questions. But the last thing, to customize your workspace, like, you know, by default, that quick access toolbar up above, there's a little arrow, down arrow at the right of that little short quick access toolbar. Then you can, right now I have mine shown below the ribbon. If I tell it show above ribbon, it moves it back up here. And then I can't get to it because other stuff is in the way. So show below ribbon. Now to add, once you get familiar with all the tools and you want to get if you prefer to use your, you know, like I do, where I then minimize the ribbon a little bit, but I can still get to stuff. But I have all these tools that I use all the time right here. That's just by first having your ribbon fully expanded, and then finding the tools that you want, and then right-clicking. And I will so right here, I don't have call out on my quick access toolbar, so this is not grayed out, so I can add it. When I add it, it puts it on the end, and then I can go in here and pick customize quick access toolbar, go find it at the bottom of the list, and unfortunately you have to pick and click. This is one of those things that's been this way forever. You can't just drag it, but you can pick that little button and go all the way up. So I want it by my section and elevation. You can create separators. That's what this little guy is here. You can delete an item from here, and you can just move stuff up and down. So now when I say okay, now I have my little call out here on my quick access toolbar. So find any tool you want to add, right click, add to quick access toolbar, get them all on there, and you can then organize them the way you like. You can minimize that ribbon like we looked at before to where it's all the way gone, then bring it back. So we already talked a little bit about moving the properties that, you know, Paul was able to get it on, I think Paul got it on one shot. Sometimes it's a little finicky to get properties or over here, or get one of these palettes to stick over here. At least in 2018 it is. But other than that, it's not a whole lot of customizing in my mind that's really going on until you get into the stuff that Alan and Zach do that's in the background in the API with all of their different tabs, that if you don't have those, you know, they can get them in there for you. But I think most of that's meant for drafting, although there's a couple there I use. And then the other place to customize is if you do like to do the shortcut keys, you can come into that user interface option on that filed option and go to keyboard shortcuts. There's lots of stuff in here that you could probably mess with, but I've used Revit since the 2009 version, and there's just not a lot. And everything was so customized in AutoCAD, and there were so many routines that we had where I used to work, and all this stuff and all these shortcut keys. And now I'm just kind of like, don't really need all of it. But if you do and you like that kind of thing, you can certainly go in and poke around. I would say just be careful with file locations. This is where it saves your temporary files. If you change some of these paths, it's hard to remember to go back and fix them if you need them. So just be careful with that. The other thing would be if you were opening a model that's shared with somebody else, there's this work sharing update frequency bar here, can slow you down or speed you up. I just keep mine set all the way down. And what this means is Revit is constantly checking in the background to see who's doing what and synchronizing, you know, when it is a shared environment. So if you push this all the way down, then it improves your Revit performance. But if you're just working in your own detached saved docs file, which we're going to do right now, then you don't have to worry about that. So we detached, we have not done any saving yet. If we save, it's going to, if I just do save right now, it's going to prompt me for that first file name. What do I want to call it? So remember in the very beginning that we did file, open, we found the file and we picked detach, so that we're completely severing from any kind of central file that anybody else is working on. But we haven't saved yet. So when you go to save the first time, you're going to get prompted for a save as, because it still doesn't know, the file just kind of existing and you've been working in it, but we haven't saved it. So then you can go ahead and save it as your copy or whatever you want, wherever you want to keep it. And now it becomes your own file with your views and whatever you need, you know, create your views. So if I want to put this view on a sheet that I created, you know, I get all my elevations and plans worked out, and I go down to my sheet. Well, that's my detail. See, I don't have anything on here. So I want, what call out was that? So this one, I didn't put a name on it yet. As soon as I place this on a sheet with the name, that's going to fill in. I'll just touch on that really quick. So there are these default sheet names that Revit's just assigning right now. So this view is, what are you? You are view 1 under the details view. Oh wait, sorry, I looked in the wrong place. You are detail 3. Okay, so I haven't renamed this. I could name it enlarged plan 1 or 2, 1. Okay, enlarged plan. All right, so there's my enlarged plan. I go to my sheet. I place that plan on the sheet. Okay, now what's not on by default in here is the title. So let me turn it to yes. So now this view knows that it's 1 on this sheet. So if I go back to that floor plan, Revit filled that in for me. So there's a lot less naming. It's kind of like sheet sets. When Autodesk added sheet set to AutoCAD, they took it from Revit. They had acquired Revit. I can't remember what year it was they acquired Revit, but after that, that's when they introduced sheet sets to AutoCAD, and they kind of worked, but they were kind of finicky. But it's the same idea. You create the views, you name the views, you place the views on sheets. The views know where they live now. The sheets are named. The view has a number. So wherever that view lives, the call out fills in. So the same thing with this elevation. It is, elevation is, come here. You got to pick on it right. Elevation 1. So if I go back to this sheet, 1A, was it 1A1 or 1A2? It must have been 1A2. I place it. Now Revit's actually helping me align it. So I can place it, and now we'll get rid of that one. So here's my elevation, as you saw when I drug it onto the sheet, because it's also goes with that plan view. It's aligning it for me, which is nice. And we can get into this kind of stuff. If anybody wants help with this, I can definitely do it offline. It wasn't really part of the training, but we have a little bit of time, and if you're interested, we can definitely do this. But that's what I like about Revit is you create those views, and it actually even helps you line things up. And then if you go back to that floor plan, you'll see that those numbers filled in. If I move this wall section over here, this is section 5. So I'm going to rename it section 1A. I'll put an A behind it because it won't like it. And then I go back to my sheet. And this is how I know I'm on the right sheet. There's my views. And then I will go into here and I will drag it. It should, there we go. It's going to give me that line. See that blue dashed line? That's how I know it's lining up. So I can come in here. I can shrink this down if I wanted. And yeah, hide that. All right, and so yeah, so it helps you line things up when they do align, which is great. And you can start messing with creating that stuff, creating that content. Oops. So yeah, let's see what else. I think that's it. Customizing a little bit there, yeah. So it's 421. Anybody at this point want to go back to anything? We can go through whatever you want. There's that other document. We've got some stuff going on in chat. What's going on?
Can we walk through, Amy, one more time how to select the section and then name it, like put it on the sheet? Because I'm selecting mine, but I'm not really seeing it under my sheets.
Okay. So let me delete those off that sheet. All right, do you want to do it on your screen? We can under WWD, there is a CL option. Oh, great. That's good to know. I'll have to take a look at it. So Paul found that there is a centerline option. Oh, just moving around. Okay, yeah, so why don't you, I'm going to stop share, and then we'll just walk you through it on your screen, and everybody can watch you do it.
Okay. So
okay, so there's, all right, so how do you know what section that is? One of the ways to know what section that is, first of all, is if you go over to the properties and scroll down on the right, we're going to be able to find the name of that section. So go ahead and keep going down. Okay, see, whoops, sometimes it does that. See how it says view name is, oh, it doesn't want to stick. Section 5. Okay, so over in your browser, go up to your views.
In here?
Is that the one you want to place? First of all, I guess I should ask, is that the one you want to place?
Yeah, I was just trying
to. Okay. Okay. So we know it's section 5. And did you say you want to rename it first, or you just want to get it on a sheet?
Just want to get it like on a sheet so that I can view it under here, right?
Okay. Okay. So there's section 5 in your browser on the left. So we can make a new sheet, or you can add it to an existing sheet. So you need to have the sheet visible, current.
Okay.
So under the, yeah, go ahead and make a new sheet. There you go. And title block, so that's good. You can just pick OK there and just take well, you can preset it if you want, but those are placeholder sheets. Okay, so in this, because we haven't categorized the sheet at all, you have to go down to where there's those 3 little question marks on the bottom left in the browser and expand that, because there's some parameters we haven't filled in yet because of how this particular template is set up. That's your sheet, so it's current. Now go back up to your view, your browser, up to that section view up above. So we've created the sheet. The sheet is visible. So you want the sheet to remain visible and current. And then we're going to go up in your browser and then find, there you go, and drag that right onto that sheet.
Okay, now this
and go ahead and just pick a point and drop it.
Got it. Okay. So now you're saying if I go back to, oh, that was not it. I lost my first floor. Okay, got it. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome. Does anybody else want to walk through any of that? If we do need to do, it sounds like there's definitely interest in the sheet stuff. I wonder if I should do a follow-up on that, because there's more to it. So like I said, you know, right now it's down under the triple question mark. If I pick on it, I can right-click to rename it. So maybe I want it to be 3.02, so I can name the number, and then I could say, you know, it's sections also, and it'll rename it. Oh, it says it's already in use. Where is it? 3.01. Oh, it doesn't like sections. Okay, I'll just call it, rename it 3.02 sections 2. Okay, Revit. Where is it saying it's already in use? Give new. What am I doing? Rename. Okay, I don't know why it's telling me that. Oh, I wonder. Oh, okay. This is me learning the Walters and Wolf template. Sorry, I don't get in here very often. The sheet already exists. So when you were scrolling down in there, you could have grabbed that. So what I was showing you about creating a new sheet, you could do it that way by just doing the title block. But if I want to make it, they have these placeholder sheets. So I apologize for that. I'm just not very familiar with all of this part yet. So now I have that 3.02. The reason it told me it already exists is because it was a placeholder sheet. So I just took the next number. And what that did, because it's a placeholder, is it filled in the sheet name and it categorized it. So this is what I was looking for up here. Every company does this different, how they're organizing their sheets. And this one is in this sheet set, sheet name, sheet number, appears in sheet list. So I'm still not 100% familiar with what matters to get it to show up here. But if you're using Walters and Wolf template, you'll have those sheets available for you. One thing you can do, and we can get into this, and I'm certainly happy to help anybody on a project, is if you're working with an architect's model, you're not going to have all these nice things that we have right now that are set up for you. What you can do is from our project template, you can create a project file. We can link in that architectural model, and then you'll have all these tools available to you to create, like with these placeholder sheets and the call outs looking right and all of these nice template, you know, pre-made settings. So even though in this model, we're looking at our model, we're also looking at a structural model. So in theory, we could just be looking at an architect's model and placing these call outs and, you know, windowing what we want and pulling some information. So that's one way to make sure that the settings are easy for you to deal with, if it's project management or somebody else, without having to get into too much of what I was going to get into over here. So because I created a new sheet and I did not use one of those placeholder sheets, when I pick on it, it's down here because it's uncategorized. It doesn't know where to go. And clearly in this project, there are some settings that are telling the sheet where it's supposed to live, or there, you know, I need to find those settings. So if I come up here and say it's in the shop drawings, so it looks like this is one of the things controlling it, that, pardon me, that moved it up into where it needs to go. So it gets into a little bit more of needing to understand how the project is set up. And if you're working in someone else's model, you're not going to necessarily have anything to help you with that. So I feel like we've done this a couple of times. You know, if you start with our template and link somebody else's model in because you want to grab some stuff, you know, it doesn't take that long to do that. And once that template is in, you have all of these sheets, you have all this placeholder stuff, you have all of these symbols that look nice, and the dimension styles and text styles are all set up. So. Excuse me. So there's a couple ways to go about it, but if you do find need help, and Gabe can help you, he's a great resource. There are plenty of people that can help with this kind of thing. But I'm always happy to help somebody get something like this set up as well. I think it's great insight into a project. So let's see, what else is in this here chat? Oh, where'd it go? Oh, all right. You are welcome. Okay, so that was hopefully sort of fast, but sort of at an okay pace for you to get an idea of what's possible. The document is there on the for your help if you want. You can save this file that you have and go in and mess around with it. Do whatever you want. You're not going to hurt anything else. Look into that other document that does talk about work sharing. If you do need to work in somebody's file, that is a working file. You just need to be careful about a few things. So, but other than that, if nobody else has any questions, we're done. So, happy Reviting. Hope you guys liked it.
Thanks,
I'm a
Amy.
nerd. I'm a total Revit nerd.
This was very informative. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. If you need help anytime, reach out. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, very good class. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.